Good evening. Welcome to the April 15th Planning Commission meeting. I think this is the first time we've ever been on Zoom. So if anyone's talking, you need to use a microphone. We'll get into more details as we get farther along, but just kind of like a quick reminder, if you're talking outside of the microphone, no one can hear you. First order of business, let's review the minutes from March 18th. Any comments or questions?
No.
None.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Craig makes the motion. Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. One down. First order of business, Cedar Hill.
Susan with STA Engineering. You were here a few months ago and received a recommendation from you for the plans and the waiver letter. We went to the Board of Supervisors after that and had some discussions of the things that you wanted us to discuss with the board and realized that we no longer really needed open space. So we took open space off the plan, and that is why we were here tonight, because the open space is no longer proposed. We have review letters from your engineers.
Let's just clarify that. So I think you went from a zoning where open space was required, and you can do the same amount. You can basically do the same development without needing an overlay for like a bonus, right? Is that basically what it?
Discovered that we kind of read your ordinance incorrectly, and in the zoning district that we're in, if you have larger lots, you can develop in accordance with a different zoning district that does not require open space. So that's sort of where we are.
Got it.
We have the larger lots, so it kind of negates the need for the open space.
Got it. Okay.
So the waivers have not changed, and the discussion we had with the Board of Supervisors was about the trail and whether or not it would they wanted paving or like a limestone, whatever, and they preferred the paving. So we do have a paved trail. I did not hear any objections to the waivers that you granted before or recommended before. So that's it.
Okay. This is almost as simple as it sounds, since we just did this. And the only thing we talked about is actually now not relevant. So we should be able to figure this out pretty quickly. So what do you have to say about all this?
Not much in our letter. Most of it is plan cleanup related. There was some of you might be focusing on the tree comment. Susan and I talked. There is some tree upsizing involved, so we are on the same page.
Okay.
We're good with that.
So there's no tree waiver.
No
Nope.
tree waiver.
Nope.
Nope.
And the whole double counting evergreens as 2 for 1, is that still relevant or not relevant?
Believe it's still proposed, but it was
Okay.
recommended the first time.
Okay.
So we'll make our plan clearer. It's probably not too clear on the plan, so we'll talk with the engineer to make it clear so that we all understand what we're doing, but we intend to comply.
And you're complying with Chad's letter as well?
Correct.
So our last recommendation said applicant will comply with tree replacement requirements and Gilmore's acceptance of the arborist findings. That's still relevant. We recommended approving the curb and pipe waiver.
I'm sorry.
Curb and pipe waiver, so there won't be any curbing and there's no piping. Or the piping was the size of the pipe. You're late. Okay. Concurrent submission of preliminary final land development. Asphalt trails, okay. So we already, no requiring of aprons. And then applicant will comply with all the comments in both Gilmore and Bowman's review letters. I took out the part that was about the open space.
Okay.
So that's basically what we recommended a couple months ago. Anyone want to make that same recommendation?
Sure, I make such a recommendation.
Okay. Who wants to second it?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Now for the main event. All right, Kristen, you ready to go?
Ready?
So last time we did this, we were the first real kind of show of what was going on. So we took a lot of the initial conversation. This go around, you guys have been through the supervisors, did a presentation to supervisors, did an open house, some kind of event, right? You got some
Couple of
comments.
them, yes.
Yes. So we don't need all that. So we're here tonight to talk about the zoning ordinance. We're going to go through it word by word, and we're going to pick it apart. You guys are proposing essentially combining two existing districts that are right next to each other. You have D1 and MF3, and we're saying we're going to put them together. There's a zoning, there's a parking ordinance, some changes that you guys are proposing. There's some signage ordinances that you're proposing to change, like within this ordinance. I don't know if you had a chance to review the Montgomery County
Yeah.
Planning Commission.
We have every review letter.
Yeah, so
We looked at them all.
that actually stole a little bit of my thunder because I thought that was a pretty good review letter.
Yeah,
in
it's
terms of
comprehensive.
in terms of what we want to talk about tonight. So just to keep everyone on their toes, we are not voting on anything tonight, right? So everyone can relax. We don't need any speeches. We don't need any, I can't believe this is happening. We don't need any of that tonight. This is actually what the Planning Commission does. We actually do work, and we're just a recommending body, and we're not here to do anything other than what we think is best for the township. So we're going to talk about the zoning ordinance tonight. There's only one way to talk about it. And in order to make it better, regardless of whether or not we think we're going to vote yes or no, we have to talk about it in like the affirmative. Like we have to talk about it like, okay, so what do we think about this part of the ordinance? That doesn't mean that we agree. And it doesn't mean that we're going to say yes, but we have to get through the ordinance words, and we can't put a caveat on literally every sentence we make for the next 2 hours while we go through all this. So I just want to make everyone in the audience I want to allay all those fears. We're not voting tonight. We're here to be productive, and we're here to talk about an ordinance that may or may not look like what it looks like right now. Okay? I don't know if any of you have read the ordinance, but that certainly is a good start. I know there's lots of emails that are going around about, oh my gosh, Lower Glen is never going to be the same. We don't really need to hear about that tonight. We're here to talk about the ordinance. I would say either the next meeting or the following meeting would be the meeting for the pitchforks and the tin hats and the conspiracy theories, but it won't be this meeting. So if you want to go home and watch the Phillies, go watch the Phillies. You want to go home and watch the Sixers, go home and watch the Sixers. This is going to be a boring meeting. We're going to be talking about things that are in the zoning ordinance that we want to talk about. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out there before everyone puts 2 hours into this meeting and like, why am I here? So that's the start. So take your whatever presentation you're going to give, and I don't know how long it takes, but cut it in half, if not more.
With that said, as long as we review the ordinance without the we don't want this to happen approach, and we get through it as if it is, and it's a viable ordinance to be considered, I'm fine with that. And we can cut to the chase and get to the details.
It's the only, and that's why I said what I said. It's the
Okay.
only way we can talk about this without, that's why I told everyone we're not voting. I don't want anyone to think that like, just because we're talking about this in an affirmative way, that it means it's going to happen. But There's no other way to talk about it. We have to talk about it in a manner in which it may or may not happen. I just wanted to lay everyone's fears so that they're not wordsmithing literally everything that comes out of my mouth.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, you haven't seen it. You're the only one that hasn't seen it. I'm guessing everyone in the audience has seen this presentation at least once. Nod of heads, raise of hands. Yes, everyone's seen it.
Has anyone not seen it? Okay, great.
Okay.
Because then I'll skip to the part that shows you what has changed
Rob-
since you have
Bob-
seen it.
Bob-
I did see the Board of Supervisors meeting. last
That's
week.
exact, then
Okay.
we
So
can
that-
get to the part that shows you what has changed since you saw it.
Perfect.
Because since you saw it, as you said, there's been meetings with neighbors, meetings with the golf club behind us, couple meetings with Gwinnett Estates. There's been staff recommendations on the ordinance back and forth and revisions to the plan, lowering the building by a story, reducing the units from 330 to 278, and a reconfiguration of the buildings along the frontage. So we can fast forward to that and show you what it looked like when it started and what it looks like now after taking all of that feedback and all of those comments and recommendations and plugging it into what we have in front of you, which is reflected in the ordinance. The ordinance backs into what I'm going to show you on the screen.
Perfect.
Does that sound good? Okay. I'm going to ask Michael to do this part because it's basically, so this is Michael Markman from BET. I'm Kristen Pianzio from Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin. I know you guys know me, but since we're on Zoom, thought I'd introduce myself. Michael is the president of BET. We're going to flip through. These are the flats. This is the type of units they were talking about, but let's just start here and then go through the changes of the plans. Thanks.
Great.
Do you have another mic in case I need? One right. Might be one under that. That's fine.
So just to start to reorient, the location, it's an existing commercial property. It currently has 2 office buildings on it, signalized intersection on the corner of Norristown Road and Route 309. So it's currently a commercial property. It's not a greenfield. Next slide. So this is the slide that talks about the differences between the original plan and this plan. So originally we had a residential density of 15 units to the acre at a max. We now have a residential unit density of 13 and a half acres at a maximum. We originally, and really what that translates back to is we originally had 350 units and 5 stories. We're down to 278 units on 4 stories. Originally, we had a 10-foot front paving setback, so the paving could be 10 feet off of Norristown Road. We got comments on that, so it's now 75-foot front paving setback. And what that allows is to save all the existing mature trees on the site. There's a hill currently, and those existing mature trees will stay, and we'll be able to weave a trail kind of between them and the project. Originally, we had a 50-foot front building setback. That's the distance from Norristown Road to the buildings. Now we have a 100-foot front building setback. So now there has to be 100 feet. So the paving can be, at this point, 75 feet, and the building has to be set back 100 feet. And once again, there's a hill, so it's difficult to see anyway. Originally, we had, what's seen as a wall of retail, it's called, along Norristown Road. And we have changed that, and we've distributed the retail to 2 different buildings across from each other with a parking field in the middle. So the visual impact from Norristown Road will be the side of a small building and the side of a larger building. And just to give you an example, this is 46,000 square feet. We own the Giant Anchored Shopping Center, which is approximately 100,000 square feet. The Giant itself is 60,000 square feet. This is 46,000. All this retail could fit inside the Giant store. It's not a lot of retail. And then originally we had what the zoning code allowed was a D1 building height, which is 60 feet plus 10 feet to cover up air condition and items like that on the roof. We're proposing to take that down to a 55-foot height with 10 feet for architectural kind of features. So essentially, we're lowering the permitted height on the site by 5 feet that currently exists. So we are getting shorter than currently is allowed on this site. So those are the changes that we had. So we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Pete for this few next slides. This is Peter Cullen, Vice President of Development for BET Investments.
Thank you. So as Michael mentioned in his conversation, the tree save area along the frontage, we know we heard a lot about that in the prior meetings and in the open house that we had. So as he mentioned, we're saving that area. We're proposing to enhance it with trails, some additional understory plantings, because a lot of what's out there is taller, more mature inventory with like a higher foliage area. In the back of the site, we're proposing a pollinator garden type of setup with a meadow, probably also combination with some stormwater, planning on extending the trails through there, seating areas, that sort of stuff in the back of the site between us and the golf course. And then on the right side of the page, you will see an area with sort of two green stripes and a white stripe up the middle of it that goes off of the property towards the Axe facility. That is the relocated emergency access. When we were in here previously, we had it shown coming off of Norristown Road, awfully close to the 309 ramp. It was suggested by your fire marshal that they would prefer a different location and suggested contacting Axe. We have been in conversations with them about this location and are working cooperatively on situations such as this. The image in the lower right is a similar emergency access that we did at another property where we have a walking trail up the middle of it and the two sides are stabilized, but it appears as grass with grass pavers so that you can, use it for a fire truck, but it's also aesthetically pleasing and a pedestrian connection as well. Additional trails have been added throughout the property, completing the network to the Axe side. At the lower right side of the page, and you can go ahead, Jamie, to that next page. So the next slide is just a very large context aerial, putting the proposed plan on the larger aerial to show proximity to surrounding neighborhoods, the adjoining townships, and the road network. A little bit closer in for a little more detail. Just blow up images of what we had showed before about the pollinator garden. That's the 4 images on the left, and then the trail through the wooded area on the right. And then we're going to jump into architecture. Mike, you want to do this?
Hi, I'm Michael McCluskey. I'm a principal with AEI, project architect. This is a view from Norristown Road. So you'll see here the tree save area. You'll see some different opacity in the actual trees here. That's honestly just to give you guys some visibility of the scale of the buildings that sit behind it. But obviously, they're not going to be opaque when they have greenery on them. But obviously, this time of year, you'd be able to see through primarily any of the deciduous trees. The right side, you see the existing access road coming in, the proposed apartment building in the back there. And you see to the left here is the grocery store. Next slide, please. So this is along the trail kind of network, just kind of on top of the hill. You're looking back to your immediate left is a grocery store. The white box that you see there is really the existing office building that just does not have any kind of ornamentation to it. Primarily in the image here, you see the architecture of the proposed apartment building, and then to your right is a small retail tenant building. Next slide. You're kind of taking a few steps up in front of the market here. You're starting to see some of the kind of entourage in there in front of the market, but you're looking back again one more step further towards the apartment building. Just to the right of the white box there, you'll see the small portion of the parking garage kind of poking its head out there. So that the residential parking garage is completely encapsulated within our building there. Next slide. This is from Axe. Again, same concept, some transparency we're showing to the tree line here. But the reality is during our spring, summer, and primarily fall seasons, You will not be able to see most of this building in the winter. Obviously, most of these leaves will have fallen from the trees, so you kind of see the scale of what we're showing there. Next slide. So zooming in, talk a little bit about the architecture here, just kind of stylistically. Really taking a lot of really kind of standard single family and traditional architectural forms, the gable roofs, a lot of similar materials to the vernacular of the area, picking up similar stones to the Whole Foods shopping center, very close to here, board and batten type sidings, horizontal lap siding. This is the main corner of the apartment building. So what you're seeing here is a kind of 2-story space. BET always does very kind of 2 options. Either it's kind of resort-like or hotel-like properties. This, as you come in, kind of has a statement lobby to it. It's a very high-end feel to the apartment building. The vast majority of the units will either have Juliet balconies. Juliet is very small balcony that allows you to open up your door and be able to kind of stick your head out, look around, or open up to let natural ventilation out, or full-size balconies. A lot of times we're going to pull the corners away to de-emphasize the scale of this. So you'll see wood look siding that starts to break down kind of more natural material. But for the most part, what we are trying to do is work within a similar vernacular of the area, but also take some of these gable forms to hide rooftop equipment and things like that. Next slide, please. Taking a step back, you kind of have your back here to the retail building, just showing again some of the style of architecture here, being as sensitive as we can to residents that are on the first floor of the actual building, residents on all sides around here, and also think about the drop-off sequence. As somebody comes in here, you want an elevated feel. So there's kind of the roundabout. There's going to be future resident parking where it's very obvious. You sit here, you park, you walk into this whole sequence of somebody coming home. This is going to be somebody's house, so you want that to kind of feel secure and an upper scale feel. So, next slide, please. This is the multi-tenant retail building, similar style of architecture, similar materials. Kind of has that natural kind of feel of the area. Again, picking up some of the cues of the Whole Foods shopping center, some natural stones, kind of wood look sidings, things like that. These would all be, maintenance-free materials, but made to look very natural in their architecture and material selections. Next slide. And then lastly, this is the proposed market, much smaller scale, as Michael said. This is in the 20,000 square foot range for a market, so a much smaller footprint. And really kind of that smaller format that you're seeing a lot more often now. Fresh turnover opportunities. You're in, you're out, you're grabbing some stuff for the next day or two. But similar style architecture, again, single slope roof, hiding rooftop equipment. Obviously, there's more things in here like cooling, refrigeration, things like that. So we're trying to take the architecture and really hide all of that stuff from the surrounding neighbors. Next slide.
Thanks, Mike.
Let's not do traffic right now.
Yeah, we're going to skip that.
Okay.
So
We'll get to
Jamie,
it.
can you go back to the beginning where we show the flats? Some of the comments had to do with amenities and community spaces. So there are community spaces that are designed for the residents who live here. As you can see, some of these, they have this center courtyard with pools. They have barbecue areas. They have areas for games. They have those garage door type entrances to community spaces. Now, if you could go forward from here. Michael, why don't you talk about some of these amenities for the residents?
So essentially what we have is a courtyard, like we'll have a courtyard in this building like we do have here, indoor, outdoor areas. So this is a resort style pool. On the lower end or the left-hand side, you can see a bocce court. We have barbecues, we have fire pits. Everything we do is to kind of encourage people to come together. And since, a lot of our population is 65 or older, what it allows people who are retired to kind of meet up. In this particular property, we have a current events group of about 20 people that meet up every day and talk about current events. Have to break up some fights sometimes, but it's interesting. Next slide. This is just another shot of the pool area. And once again, try to make it like a resort-like pool area because the whole idea is for when people come home, they want to feel like they're on vacation. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. Another shot of the pool area. If you see in the back, it's kind of an indoor-outdoor area that goes into the common area where people can work or meet or play pool or ping pong. Next slide. Here's the fire pits with the doors open. We always do indoor-outdoor spaces so that you can have fresh air on the inside, when the weather's permitting. Next slide. So we kind of have a area to serve food. We always have a coffee machine and everything we can do to encourage people to kind of come together and be social and not be isolated. Next slide. And then we just have the apartment. So if you can go through these, I just want to go back to one of the architecture close up to the building, if we can. I just want to make one other point. So go forward till you get to the Mike McCluskey slides. A little close, keep going, keep going, keep going. One more. So just so you know what I tasked, because I know I heard a lot of comments about this is big, this is so big. Well, I tasked the architect, I said, go back and, show me something that almost looks like 4-story townhouses lined up with each other. So what's gone on here is we've broken up the building as much as possible, different roof lines, different heights, different materials. So when you break it up like this and you actually have ins and outs throughout the whole thing, it doesn't look as large. And we heard people were concerned that it would look large, even though it's set back on the property and there's a hill in front of you. You will see this slightly from 309, but and what we've done is really kind of mixed it up so it doesn't seem like one continuous building, kind of like the office building that's staying kind of looks like that right now. So it's broken up. And then I guess we can go to.
Okay. All right. So we do have all the review letters. I can start first. Al Comley basically said his comments are for land development. Obviously, circulation is important to him and things like that.
Yeah, I think the most important aspect of that is just kind of to prove that there is a good solution to any of his comments, questions, or concerns.
Yes,
So I agree with that. Otherwise, that it's a land development issue.
yes.
Why don't we jump into some math?
To which?
Some math.
Math? Sure.
So right now at 278 units, based on the acreage, your current density is 11.58. Why does the ordinance that's proposed say something different than that?
The ordinance is written at 12 with a bonus of 1.5 if you do the affordable.
Okay.
So when they took the story off, and I'll ask Michael to chime in if I get any of this wrong, when they dropped the building and took a story off, it neatly landed at 278. So they adjusted the unit count, the per acre count to something round to 12 with the 1.5 unit density. But yes, we haven't really used it. It was pointed out at the supervisor meeting that there is room for a few more units. I think that's where you're going. But there's not any more proposed for this building. And we are committed to this design with this building and this density as part of our conditional use application. That's what we're showing. And that's what we're willing to agree as a condition of a conditional use approval.
So, and so anyone on the planning commission, when you guys want to jump in, just kind of, because I'm just going to keep talking until someone says not to.
Okay.
And I will get to questions when we think it's kind of relevant, but let us kind of run for a little bit. And if we move on and someone wants to say something, just raise your hand. Because I do have a tendency to forget to ask because we don't get a lot of people coming to our meetings normally. Okay.
So the original 12 per unit was written specifically for the larger structure, and now since it's been decreased.
Was 13 and a half to begin
We
with.
have a smaller number.
Yeah.
So if you were going to build this originally, the original proposed ordinance would have been at these numbers, not the elevated numbers, correct?
It was originally at 13 and a half, and then it was dropped to 12
Right.
when it was revised.
Before it was 13 and a half to 15. Now it's 12 to 13 and a half.
Right. So if you were going to build this originally, these numbers would have been in the original ordinance. So changing them to the lower number, which is what you're doing now, makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of getting at is a couple things. So clearly this is the conversation, right? This is what everyone wants to talk about is density. We'll talk about traffic, but density starts the traffic conversation. So if you take the current zoning, which is D1, and you take the current zoning next door, which is MF3A, and all you do is combine those two things, it makes it kind of hard to really talk about it in a negative way. You have two ordinances that are existing, and all you're doing is smashing them together. There are things that you're doing that kind of put that on steroids a little bit, and this is one of them. So I think, and we'll figure out how to talk about workforce housing, because that's a political conversation just as much as it is any other conversation. You might be able to argue that a bonus would then be something that would be over something that's existing. So if you went from 8 to 9.5, and again, you're staying within the current confines of our existing ordinances, again, that kind of becomes hard to beat back from a mob perspective, because again, you have all this existing stuff and you're just mashing it together. So, and you don't have to say whether or not you would accept 8 and 1.5, but do you at least understand by doing that where that might make sense? Because then it becomes a lot harder to come back and look at the density and say, well, you're really not doing anything other than what's already there. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
If I'm following you, when you say you're smashing it together, you're taking a multifamily use and an office building, which allows a height of 60. And if you're saying it by that stretch, you're putting them together. I agree. Obviously, a mixed use development, although the Elder has components that are kind of mixed use, but they're of a much smaller nature. They're not open to the public generally. And it's not an office building with retail, with restaurant and multifamily of a different nature, right? So although theoretically there's components that are the same, the product is very different and very much modern, because that multifamily is a 30-foot height limitation. It's for housing for the elderly. They have different needs. They operate completely differently. But there are likenesses. I agree with you. It's a lifestyle choice. We want to rent. We don't want to own. We don't want to take care of property. So to the extent we agree on those similarities, sure. But there are differences, obviously.
Of course. And I think we're going to find common ground on setbacks, on even building height. You guys have made a couple concessions on building height. So I think like we can figure out how to get through all that.
Sure.
But the density aspect of this and then the bonus aspect of this. So at a minimum, I would say if you guys were comfortable with 278, then the ordinance shouldn't say any more than that. So it should be keyed backwards from there. And we can talk about, you know, just using round numbers. If you're at 278 right now, which is 11.6, we're going to round it to 11.5 just to make it easy to talk about.
Well, 11.6.
Okay. But can it just,
I don't go down, Craig. I go
I
up.
gave you the caveat. We won't talk about the one unit.
Okay.
But just using some round math.
Okay. So if it was.
The ordinance would say 10, and then the bonus would be 1.5.
I understand what you're saying to me.
So I do think that it's important that whatever number we get to in terms of what ordinance that we're going to vote on, it be as precise as possible, because any wiggle room that you guys have in this ordinance is going to be perceived as a bait and switch, and you're going to come in with 25 more units when you come in for land development. And so whether you agree with that or, you know,
Yeah.
forget the trust aspect of it and just say, you got to understand where residents are coming from, that should be the number.
I
It should be no
understand.
more than
I
that.
understand what you're saying. We thought of that with the conditional use, and that's why they're being filed together, because the conditional use hearing will have attached to it plans and exhibits, and the solicitor will condition that approval, that it be based on the plans and exhibits presented at the hearing. So I know I'm never getting any more than 278 under that conditional use. But I understand what you're saying. You'd like it to back in and match perfectly.
Yeah.
I
Because the
made-
second
I-
part of it is everyone's afraid the show is going to go on the road.
I understand.
So the best way for it to alleviate those fears is to make it very, very concise.
Okay.
And, the legalese stuff that you're talking about with the conditional use and how it wraps you together, I mean,
And
obviously,
and binds us.
yeah, we try to understand that, but to make the world understand that, that's also can be challenging at times.
Okay.
So
All right.
I think we need to make that precise.
All right. I got it.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? You, maybe, stand up. Do we have a roving mic? Name and address.
Jim Thomas, Lamplighter Lane. Yeah, the density is what's, and the height of the building. Is this the first building that's going to be 4 stories or, that's going to be in Lower Gwinnett?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the
Well,
answer.
Yeah.
So,
Can you just talk about density? So I think you walked in after I gave my speech. No speeches. We're not voting tonight. We're just talking. So
and that was my question.
Okay.
Is this the highest, height of residential living, this 4-story? And would you consider going down to 3 stories? And would you consider, a lower density in this area? Because once we go to this kind of density, it reminds me of Philadelphia. And these are the new buildings that are going up in Philadelphia, and it would be much better if we would keep it a little bit lower density. Thanks.
yeah. So understood. And
And
That-
so that means height-wise, 1 less story and commensurate less apartments. Thank you.
I do know that the F district does have a mixed use component that allows apartments. That was at Ambler Yards. If
Yeah.
you remember that, that's 45 feet.
so we're close. The wow factor of, remember, MF3 already has 8 units per acre. So if we're going to call that the standard, the wow factor when you guys were almost double, that was certainly what happened the last time everyone was here. We're way less than that right now.
Mhm.
So I'm just making sure everyone realizes that the wow factor has gone down dramatically. So when we talk about what does this really represent? Yes, it's more than what we currently allow, but it's not double. So just kind of keep everyone in perspective here as we talk about this. Yeah. Who's got, go ahead.
Thank you. Leslie Woodward, I live at 765 Tennis Avenue. If this zoning ordinance changes with their special exceptions, what does that do to the zoning of the Act property?
Nothing.
Will that change that because you're changing MF3? So will that also change the zoning at the Act property?
I'll let you answer that.
So what we're doing is adding a use to the MF3, which is a mixed use development by conditional use. It's the sister to a special exception, goes in front of the supervisors. So a mixed use has to have 3 components, and the components are listed in the ordinance. So AX is housing for the elderly. So they are only allowed under housing of the elderly. That's not in the mixed use component. But part of the 3 would have to be an apartment building, office, retail store, personal service shop, restaurant, bank, medical office. So I don't foresee AX would have to be completely redeveloped as a mixed use, knock everything down and start from scratch in order to do a mixed use development.
But you're changing the zoning there.
No, the zoning's staying the same.
Let me try to say it a little bit differently. So AX is MF3. This is getting added to MF3. So technically AX is eligible to do the things that, so to answer your question, technically, the answer is yes. Now, is it realistic? No. And that's what Kristen was getting at. The only way it would realistically happen is you'd have to bulldoze the whole place and start from scratch. So if that's a threat, then that's a threat. But you'd have to decide whether or not it's likely that they're going to take, a couple hundred elderly people and move them someplace else and then tear all the buildings down.
Yeah,
Am I-
I'm confused.
No, but am I correct in understanding then that if Axe decides to close up shop there, not be that community, and someone else comes in and wants to develop it, they could make it similar to what's being proposed at this site?
That's correct.
And I mean, part of this is the setback. Axe would have a buffer zone in which they could accommodate other uses, wouldn't they?
I mean, Axe has been in front of us so many times. I don't remember exactly what their footprint is, but
I mean, how big they are, how big their property is?
yeah, well, they qualify from an acreage standpoint.
Sure.
But I don't know if they have enough open space to build
I
other
mean,
buildings.
The amount of infrastructure that they would have to destroy to start over, I can't imagine it would ever be economically feasible. Not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Not in my children's
I mean,
lifetime.
so look, that's the honest answer. It's a big what if. I mean, of all the what ifs we're going to talk about, that's probably last on the list.
Right. Say so.
Unless you live across the street.
Well,
Well, Axe didn't give us any inclination that they are interested in this ordinance at all. They're interested in that connection.
okay, go ahead. Let's answer some questions. It only goes downhill from here, these guys. So it's going to get really boring real fast.
I'm just here to ask a question. So all that being said, my name is Landon Woodward. I live at 765 Tennis Avenue with my wife, Leslie. I just have a question. So all that being said, well, it wouldn't be feasible. Why would they do it? Why are we going to change, make it the same zoning? Just make this property its own zone. Why does it have to be MF3? There's no reason it has to be MF3. Make it its own zone. That's
a legal question, and you can decide whether or not you want to answer it. But we are the receiver of this information, so we're not the generator of this information. So it's a good question.
They have more components than we do. I mean, if we were going to say.
I do think there was, at least at the beginning, there was this thought process and not really taking what we just talked about as a risk. When I talk about just mashing two things together, that's really what we're doing. We're taking D1, which is right next door, and MF3, which is right next door, and we're just kind of putting them together. So I think that was at least the original intent.
Well, if you look at the comprehensive plan for Lower Gwinnett, that I know it's not approved yet, but it doesn't show that being the same. It shows this property being completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, why can't we do that? Why wouldn't they propose that? It'd be easier.
Okay, it's a fair point.
We'll take a look at it. I'll make
Okay.
a note of it.
Did you have a question you want to ask? Okay.
If I want to ask or anything.
That's very interesting. Do you want to comment on whether or not you have any plans to bulldoze your own building?
Yeah. Let's have your name, please.
Hi, I'm Donna Thompson. I'm the Executive Director at Gwinnett Estates. I think for the purpose of everyone who lives at Gwinnett, I'd like to say that there are no plans at any point to relocate anyone, change anything there's nothing in our master plan for that. And in fact, where we're considering and what we're building, we couldn't build in the front of the building. That was complicated because of the type of land that we're sitting on. So there's no plan to change it in my lifetime right now, I'll say. So I just wanted to make sure any resident that maybe might be concerned of that. So
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Keep the rumor mill, at least on that subject, to a minimum. Okay. I'm going to move on from density because we have a lot of other things to talk about. So we didn't make any decisions. We just kind of talked it through a little bit. I
Okay.
think you're getting a little bit of a sense on where we're coming from.
I hear you.
Okay. Um, let's, I guess, go for number 2. So let's talk about traffic.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah. Let's get to 2. So everyone can go watch the Sixers and the Phillies.
Okay.
So the first thing I would say about traffic is like that traffic study is like 80 pages.
Yes.
I think I know what 4 pages are really important, but like who can tell me what, like, so if the residents were going to go look at the traffic study and not read all 78 pages, but they were going to look at 4 tables, what are the 4 tables that really matter in that traffic study?
Or might you?
The executive summary.
This
The
is
first-
This is Matt Hammond from Traffic Planning and Design. He's
Was that a softball question for you?
Yeah.
It was, thank you. I appreciate that. No, again, Matt Hammond, TPD. Yeah, so typically what happens is a lot of residents, when they're coming out and they're trying to read that traffic study, is actually more than 80 pages. It's a couple hundred pages. Just look at the executive summary, which is after the cover, table of contents, and there's an executive summary, which kind of outlines some of the main components. The executive summary includes the location of the site, the proposed access, site distance, level of service, how the intersections operate within the study area, and then lists the proposed recommendations that that we made as a result of the analysis that was conducted, which essentially is what we're doing from a roadway improvement perspective. So if you look at the executive summary, that would give you a good sense of the gist of the traffic.
Just to add something, the executive summary is in the PC packet on the website. So if anybody here would want to see it, it's included.
Okay.
And this is actually, so what's being shown on the screen right now is actually a executive summary on steroids.
Okay.
And what we tried to do here is we went into a little bit more depth than we typically do in the executive summary. We kind of outlined some of the other important points, some of the things that we've heard throughout the open houses, throughout the various presentations and meetings that we've had. And what we did is we included some additional information in there. And if you could scroll down maybe. And when we talk about the recommendations, instead of just listing out the recommendations, what we're looking to do from a roadway improvement perspective, we actually provided pictures and graphics so that people would have a clear understanding of when we said we're going to do X, Y, and Z, that they understand what X, Y, and Z means. So within that memo, that's, like I said, is typically the executive summaries of 2 or 3 pages. This one's 5 or 6 pages and includes a lot of graphics.
So, Jamie, the full traffic study is on the website or is not on the website?
Both, yes.
Okay.
The full traffic study is, and the summary is, and the smaller version of the traffic summary with the traffic study without the appendices is also on the website.
Okay. So what's the difference between the 2027 and the 2032? Like all those different tables, like what's that all about?
So typically, great question. When we prepare traffic studies, we want to look into the future, right? So we know that if we go out and conduct traffic counts, that the site's not being built tomorrow and won't be generating traffic tomorrow. So we have to predict when we anticipate the site to be fully operational. And that's typically our base year. So in this case, it was 2027. We assumed project would be approved, be under construction, and hopefully some portions of it would be open.
All right, so stop right there. So 2027 is current traffic with a little bit of growth. And that's your baseline for what exists today, but it's actually 2027.
So it's current traffic, a little bit of growth, and then known developments in the area, which may also add traffic to the study area intersection. So the intersections that we studied, if there are developments that are in front of the board, in front of the planning commission, that are real developments, we include those traffic volumes within the traffic study to come up with our 2027 conditions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What is the radius that you consider for this site?
So the rate, it varies depending on the project. I will tell you that this radius or the intersections that were studied go from Bethlehem Pike,
I call it the Five Points intersection over at the Whole Foods Shopping Center, all the way down to Tennis Avenue. So all of those main intersections within this corridor are the intersections that were included within the study. It was something that was coordinated with the township before the traffic study was completed.
Do you consider traffic that developments that are within a mile and a half of this development? I'm referring specifically to the development that's at Norristown and Limekiln, that where the tornado was that tore down. They're building big stuff there.
Sure, I actually worked on that development.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My question was, does this or would subsequent traffic studies take into consideration developments that are within a mile and a half distance from this site, as they're in nearby townships? I'm referring specifically to the development on Norristown Road and Limekiln, where they're building.
72 townhomes.
Yeah.
Correct. So yes, well, again, it's not general, there's no hard and fast rule that we have to look at a mile and a half in every direction. It's, again, you're looking at what developments are approved or what developments are under or proposed, and determining whether or not those developments will have traffic that will impact the intersections within your study area. So the development you're talking about, Goodman Properties, 72 townhomes, that was not specifically included in the study, but it was called out for in the study, but it was included in the general growth that we talked about.
Okay.
72 townhomes is going to generate 34 trips in the peak hour. That development has two accesses, one on Welsh Road and one on Norristown Road. So by the time it gets down to Tennis Avenue, it'll be a very minimal amount of traffic. It would be added to that intersection during those peak hours because of that development. There's also a development on the other side of Norristown Road at Welsh. I believe it's 45 townhomes. I also worked on that project as well. So that was also included in that general growth. So we did take that into account. We also, you'll notice in the study, one of the developments that we took into account was the redevelopment of the ship property. I was involved in that. Obviously, or at least as far as I know, nothing has happened on that property in the last year or two. But we did know at one point that there was a pretty substantial proposal there to redevelop that property. So to be conservative, we included that growth within the traffic study as well. We actually took the actual volumes from the previous traffic study and included that within this latest version in February that we provided to the township for review.
So there's in the traffic study, there's with ship and without ship.
Okay.
So you answered that question.
Correct.
Excuse me, basic question. What do you mean by trip? How does that equate to cars on the road?
So a good question. So a trip is, so let's just say, let's make it easy. Someone that's entering the proposed development is one trip. That same car leaving is a second trip. So over the course of a day, you could say the development generates 100 trips, which would be adding 50 vehicles to the roadway, right? A trip in and a trip out. It's a little harder when you're looking at peak hours because sometimes you have more people coming in and less people leaving in the morning and more people leaving in the afternoon. So essentially it's one car in and that same car out, that's two trips.
Okay. Just on the executive summary, you talk about additional trips. If I'm reading it right, one is the added trips per this, development. But then when you subtract what's already, I guess, from the office building fully there, there's a net gain. Am I reading that right? So like first, I'm just looking at, weekday AM would generate 131 net trips.
Right. So the fourth bullet point, the fourth bullet point down talks about what the site would generate if it was a greenfield, if there was no traffic, right? So 311, 339, and 382 respectively. The next bullet point talks about if the site was fully occupied, if there was 100% occupancy in those office buildings, that the difference between what's being proposed and what exists there today is the 131, the 166, and the 256.
Okay. So let's stop right there for a second. So one of the things that I think is interesting about the whole net conversation is what would happen if you had developed the property by right as a D1, because it still had capacity, right? You could put another office building up. So not saying that that is the right choice, but my point is by right, you could look at that net comparison and say, well, what if they put up a third office building? What if it was, 15 years ago? We wouldn't have any say in it, and the net would actually go down as a result of that.
Correct.
So I'm curious as to why you don't try to tell that part of the story.
So I've been doing this a long time. I've been in front of many planning commissions, many supervisors. It would be difficult, in my opinion, for me to stand in front of this group and stand in front of the residents, same residents I've been seeing for the last year and a half, and say, well, we could, if this would be the difference between fully occupied office and what we're proposing. And it also includes a third office building, which we could potentially build. Not saying that that's not accurate, that's not true. I just think it's harder for me to convince residents of the fact that there's another office building that could have been built 15 years ago when they see 2 office buildings there today. So therefore, I want to be a little bit more conservative in my numbers and say, well, let's just look at the 2 office buildings that exist there today. If we look at that, this is the additional traffic that's going to be generated. But the reality is, as you mentioned, 15 years ago, they could have built another office building. And if that were the case, there'd have been less traffic. But then we get to people driving by there every day, and the office park is less than 100% occupancy. It's even less vehicles traveling in and out. So it just makes the argument that I'm presenting harder. So I'd rather be conservative in that regard, if that answers your question.
Okay. So one of the tables that I thought was interesting, so 2032 is,
So
the place is all built.
Yeah, you had the question. I didn't answer the full
That's
part
fine.
of that.
That's good. I know
So
the answers to most of these questions.
2032 is just taking, so in a development, depending on the amount of traffic that's being generated, you look at what's called the build out year, or I'm sorry, the projected year, and that's 5 years after the facility would be open. So look at 2032, which is essentially just adding 5 years in growth in traffic based on statistics, traffic data that's collected in the area. You just add another 5 years of growth on there, and then you come up with the 2032 conditions.
So, lot of conversation, and I'm sure you're used to it all over the place. Oh, the traffic's horrible no matter where you go, no matter what happens. And it always backs up. But what I thought was kind of interesting about the traffic study was the 4 tables that had the trip distribution, which to me looked like it was the net changes to the intersections of how many cars would make it all the way down to Bethlehem Pike at a certain time of day. I thought it was interesting. No one goes north on 309. So like, I think it was figures 16, 17, 18, and 19, somewhere in that range. Like, if you were going to have the residents go look and like, okay, how is this going to affect me? It seemed like those 4 tables where it showed the net trip distributions, like where the cars end up the most. The fact that not anyone really is going towards Maple Glen, like that, those are the 4 tables that really kind of tell the story about traffic. And just thought it was interesting because it doesn't really show a huge amplification in some of the places that people get very concerned about.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did as part of the open house is we did have charts and tables prepared, larger graphics that showed the percentage of traffic and where it was coming from and going to related to this development, the net traffic. If I remember off the top of my head, it was about 34% going to and from Bethlehem Pike, 2% going north on 309. I don't recall the number going south.
Do you want the chart?
I don't, 15%. And then the remainder would be, Upper Dublin, up Tennis Avenue, down Tennis Avenue and the like.
Can you put up our slide?
And that's based on, the typical accepted methodology when you look at how traffic patterns are today and the type of uses and where you would expect everything to go. There is a chart table, right there. So that's something that we had prepared as a graphic to kind of give the residents a sense of where everyone is coming from and going to, and what that equated to in terms of trips. And again, keep in mind, this is peak hours. So when we conduct traffic studies, we want to look at the AM, especially for office or residential, or even retail, we want to look at the peak hours of traffic. And that's typically the one highest hour between 6:30 and 9:30 in the morning on a typical weekday is the AM peak, one highest hour. And then in the PM peak, it's the one highest hour approximately between 4 and 6 PM. So when you see the most amount of traffic, with the theory that if you look at the peak hours of traffic, you determine what mitigation is necessary, you mitigate your impact, that the other 22 hours of the day would also work as well.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think if you were going to only concentrate on one thing, that's it. Because that really tells the whole story of the traffic study, right? That's the second part of the executive summary. Because I even think like when you show just like the Greenfield calculation, that seems a little scary. Like, I mean, you know, I appreciate the honesty, but that's like, oh boy, that'll take 10 minutes to explain just
Yeah.
by itself.
And keep in mind though, too, is that why I can appreciate that this traffic study is being conducted and it's going to be presented and maybe reviewed by residents. At the end of the day, my audience is not only the planning commission, but my audience is the township's traffic engineer and PennDOT. So I need to provide the information that they request and they require to be included in the studies. I don't disagree that it's scary when you look at those numbers, but that's information I must provide and it must be included in the study for someone like Chad and someone like PennDOT to review as well.
Who's got questions about traffic? Go ahead. Name and address. Yes, please.
There you go.
Mark Schaefer, 23 Brookline Court. I look at this, give me a sense of scale. It says 48 trips. How many trips are going down that road right now? Is that doubling the traffic? Is it 1%? Is it 2%? I think just putting up numbers like this, people go, geez, 48 trips. But what does that mean in terms of what we've got? I mean, that's my concern. I think that's a better way to explain it to the public is 48 trips is, well, so that's another car a minute, right? 48 trips during that peak hour.
So you're
It's less
talking
than a
about the
car-
AM peak under the
Yeah, let's make it
34%?
48. So that means less than one additional car per minute.
One additional trip, less, correct. One less than one additional trip every minute. That road in the AM peak hour experiences about 2,000 vehicles in an hour.
That's the scale we need to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And depending on which direction you're talking about, we're adding either 7 cars or 38 cars.
Correct, 7 cars eastbound, 38 westbound, but total, we're adding 45 to that section of Norristown Road, where in the morning, like I said, it's real quick math, 1,900 or 2,000 vehicles are traveling on that road in that 1 hour. Similarly, in the PM peak hour, 56 trips, we're adding 1 trip every minute to that road, which in doing this a long time, and I've been told otherwise, but it'd be very difficult for anyone to differentiate the additional 1 trip every minute that's added to this by this development to that section of roadway.
What's 34% mean?
So it's 34% of all of the traffic in the, so taking the site is 100%, 34% of it is going towards Bethlehem Pike.
It looks like you're increasing traffic by 34% on that section of roadway.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, no, no, that's not. it's not what we're doing.
Maybe we'll work on that, huh?
I would have sent somebody, one of my
Yeah.
colleagues here if that was the case.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been in. Yeah. Okay. Who else has got questions about traffic?
We need a mic.
Something that was brought at a.
Mary Scott, Chesterfield Drive. And we understand it's not their responsibility, but I think it's an important point that the traffic study is not include any consideration to what Johnson & Johnson might be doing at the old Siemens Moore Products.
Yeah.
And so I know it's not their responsibility, but it is the township's responsibility to look at this broadly. So that's my only point on that.
And yes, and that was a comment that was brought up at the supervisors meeting. I appreciate that. My response is the fact, just like we are, Johnson & Johnson, when they come in and have their plans and know what they need to do, they need to provide a traffic study. And their traffic study, if it happens within the next, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or whatever, prior to this development being approved and under construction, they will include our development as background growth. So we're committing to do certain improvements. they need to build upon those improvements and mitigate their impact. So traffic study was done before any of those plans were announced. Like I said, it happens, but their traffic study will include our development and our improvements, and then they need to build upon those.
Okay. So,
Greg, gentlemen.
go ahead.
Thank you. Greg Horn, 1013 Evans Road. I would just ask that this group, and you have fiduciary responsibility, to consider things not in a vacuum and not independently. So as Mary brought up, she talked about J&J and 500 employees coming in there every day. So that is far more than are going to come in from this development. And you've got tributaries that can't be widened. Sumneytown Pike, historic properties, lack of ability to widen that road. This township is going to find itself in a standstill with traffic. So I'd ask you all to really think about this decision based on the overall impact of what's going on in this township.
I want to say one more thing about Johnson & Johnson because people keep bringing it up. So like Matt said, when they come in, they have to do their work, right? And I've represented 2 owners of that property that had plans for that property that never happened. So that's why we don't take into consideration a project that hasn't even filed a plan because things happen. And the 2 owners that I've represented had big plans. None of them came to a plan being filed. So that's why we don't plan for things that aren't actually real. And they're not even real when they file plans. I've had projects fully approved with permits and my clients have walked away. But he takes into account things that have at least been filed, and J&J isn't at that point. And J&J will have to deal with their traffic study and the improvements that they'll have to do when their project comes in.
So this is Mimi Gleason. I'm the township manager. So the planning commission understands and all of the public, J&J has met with township staff about that they will be submitting at some point plans and have said that they estimate that there will be 500 employees, 20 over 24/7 shifts. So 500 total, not 500 at one time, not even 500 like 3 shifts Monday through Friday because there's weekend shifts. So just keep in mind that's going to be spread out over a 24/7 cycle.
So,
about the study that was done, you have a group of intersections here where it was done on October 24 through 26. And then there was a group that was done February 13 and 15. Were they added later because you wanted to add those particular sections in and? Or were they going to be done anyway, but they just were done later?
No, so what happened was that those intersections, I believe, were included in the original application, original study. But it was based on information that was collected. It was older. It was based on information that we had collected as part of the SHIP project. So I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe the reason why these counts were done after the fact was because there were some questions as to the age of those traffic counts and the validity of those counts as it compares to today. So we went back out and recounted those intersections. So we have multiple data points for McKean Road, multiple data points for Bethlehem and Norristown Road. But in addition, as far as that intersection is concerned, our data was prior to the installation of the improvements that were done by the township. So we went out and recounted those intersections.
Okay. So all the data that's in this study is data that you collected, not data from other studies.
Correct, but so when we look at background growth, when we're including other developments that are known, sometimes that information is collected, is utilized from other traffic studies that were done. So for instance, if there was a traffic study that was done for the SHIP project, we would extract some of the information from that SHIP project. We would reference it in a study. We'd include it in a study. But otherwise, all the data in here is data that we collect.
Okay.
Just one point of
clarification on the counts. I'm sorry, Chad Dixon, Bowman Consulting, Township Traffic Engineer. Just one other clarification on when the data was collected. When this process all first started over a year ago and Matt did his initial traffic counts, their original study area only went to McKean, or only went to the ship driveway on Norristown Road, and the township asked them to add the McKean Road intersection and the 5 Points intersection to the study area as well. So they went back out in February and did the counts for those two intersections.
Yes, sorry, you're right. Yep.
So the counting that was it done with a particular procedure that is recognized by the standards of how you take a traffic count?
Absolutely. And all of the raw data is provided to PennDOT and the Township Traffic Engineer for review.
Okay, so you,
Is it electronic? Is it electronic? Is it people counting?
Yes.
Is that your question?
no, I just want to make sure that the reason I'm raising this at a previous meeting, there was a question of traffic study, and someone made the comment, well, we don't know where the numbers are going to come from, and we don't want to believe them anyway. But I just want to establish that there were standards used to take this study in terms of the count, how it was counted, and how it's represented, so that the numbers are believable. And that,
But he said he wasn't questioning my veracity, if you remember.
yeah, I heard that.
But someone might be. Let's just assume someone was.
Yes. Yeah. No,
How would you answer that question, Council?
I would, yes, how I would answer the question is yes, the traffic counts were conducted according to standards, the typical standards. Beyond that, I can sit here and tell you all day that we did them per standards. At the end of the day, all of the data, everything that we do, that's why the study is 300, 400 pages long. Everything that we do is provided to the Township Traffic Engineer for review, and confirmation is provided to PennDOT for review and confirmation. So I can sit here and tell you whatever I want to tell you. At the end of the day, I need them to review the data. They have to agree that it's acceptable. They have to agree that it's reasonable before Chad will give me the okay on the traffic study, before PennDOT will give us the okay and allow us to make any roadway improvements within the right of way.
I'm certain that you did follow it, but I wanted to put it on the record because the question comes up from time to time about how can we believe this data? Now, it's not only your data that you're presenting, it's going to be reviewed by the Township Traffic Engineer and also PennDOT. So if any of the data looks squirrely, somebody's going to raise a question besides someone in the audience or us, someone that's recognized as an expert who understands traffic studies and the standards that are supposed to be used. So that the numbers, if there are a problem with, should show up in that multiple review of this data.
So, and I can tell you, I can go one step beyond that. I've been doing this 31 years and I never say never. I don't believe I've ever been, any of the traffic counts or data that we provided has ever been questioned from a validity standpoint. There may be questions with respect to, well, these counts look low this day. We have counts from another time period. Maybe you go back out and recount it. Maybe it was just something happened that day. No problem. But no one has ever questioned the validity of the data that I presented, because again, it's being reviewed by professionals as well. And if something feels squirrely, they're going to let me know. But I've never been accused of that in 31 years.
Okay, we're on the record, so
All right.
everybody knows that it's
But-
reviewed more than one time.
Can a traffic study become stale?
Yes.
So what's the standard for that?
The standard, and typically we follow the PennDOT standards because most municipalities don't have a standard in their ordinance. The standard's 3 years. The data being 3 years old.
3 years from what? Like what? So what's the trigger of saying that it's 3 years from? Like, is it land development approval? Is it like what is the
3 years from when the data is collected. So that's why we put that table number 3 in the traffic study. We say exactly the day, the year, the month when the traffic counts were conducted. So that the traffic data, PennDOT typically says traffic data is valid if it's 3 years old or younger or less. So that when you get into Now, the fourth year doesn't necessarily mean you got to redo the counts. Sometimes we'll go out, and if you have multiple intersections, we'll go out and count the main intersection and see how that compares to the counts that were conducted 4 years earlier. If there's adjustments necessary, we'll make adjustments. But it doesn't really have much to do with when the plan's approved, when the plan's recorded, those type of things. It has to do with the actual data in the traffic study.
So like if it's October 2027 and we're still talking about this, it's stale.
Well, we would make the determination based on how long the approval process goes. But the other thing to keep in mind, part of the reason for projecting out into the future what the future traffic volumes is, there's a recognition that there's going to be a time lapse between when the traffic study was completed and when the development and the improvements are actually going to be built. So part of the reason for projecting those years out into the future is to take into account the timeline of the project. And if we're still sitting here 4 years from now and they still haven't gotten land development approval, maybe we have to talk about redoing counts.
Okay.
But
I just, so, Chad, you brought this up in your letter, and I think it's something that we definitely want to add to the ordinance, which is the post-development traffic study. I think we need to be very prescriptive about that. Again, to allay any kind of fears of a proposed zoning ordinance, that it's in there and it's very specific. So that'll definitely be part of the homework, is adding that to the ordinance.
Yes, we offered that at the supervisor meeting too.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's something that is not unusual for certain developments to provide the post-development trip generation analysis, just to confirm some of the assumptions made are valid and accurate. Because it's, part of what I do is science, but part of it's art.
Okay. Who has any more questions about traffic? I'm not saying you're done, but certainly moving on. Anyone else want to talk about traffic? Oh, I knew you guys couldn't help yourselves. All right, go ahead. Remember, no speeches. Okay, just making sure.
Thanks, Mark. Mark Gray, 331 Arbor Lane. I have lots of questions, but one of the questions I had was the traffic study for the YMCA that came up in one of the supervisors meetings, and maybe staff can answer this. They were going to dig up, at least I thought they were going to dig up the traffic study that was done for the YMCA. That was a long time ago that was done. But the problem with the traffic study back then was they counted on 10,000 members. And the number that wound up, that I recall, was 30,000. So the residents on McKean were furious because the estimate was wrong. Nobody was lying. Nobody did anything nefarious. It just, they were really successful. And that's what happened. So if we can get a copy of that, and I think that would be helpful. I didn't see it on the website, and I couldn't find my copy. And that happened before my time, right before I was on the board. So it would be helpful to get that.
So and this is the YMCA, the infamous YMCA study was brought up as part of the SHIP project that we were working on a few years back. The difference between that traffic study and the traffic study we prepared is the YMCA had a significant variable. They were selling memberships. So it was not that, you sell 10,000 memberships, you have 20,000 memberships, you have 30,000 memberships, right? Unless there's a cap on the number of memberships, there's a variable in the amount of traffic that we generated. The difference here is we have apartments, we have retail, and office. So we can only fit a certain amount of people in the apartments. We can only fit a certain amount of people in the offices. We can only fit a certain amount of people in the retail, right? So it's not as if, and I'm not saying that we're 100% accurate, which is, I think, one of the reasons why the township is looking at the post-development study. But in the same respect, we may only be off a few percentage points, whereas the YMCA study was vastly off because they sold or had more members than they had predicted in the traffic study. So we don't have that same variable here.
They almost don't have that variable here. That's a question for another topic. I'll bring it up later.
Okay, I look forward to it. What's your question?
You had a picture of the crash, the large amount of crashes in the areas. Can you pull that up and can you figure out how they're going to be affected with the
Yeah,
increase in numbers of cars?
There's a table.
With where the one intersection had 5 crashes and the rest were less than that.
Reportable crashes, correct.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that that was a large amount of crashes. And based on my experience, there was also, when we look at intersections, one of the things that we need to look at as a result of the traffic study is the reportable crash data. And essentially, what the reportable crash data is when an injury or fatality occurs and at least one of the vehicles involved requires towing from the scene. That's what you classify as a reportable crash. And then on top of that, you boil that information down and look at, of those reportable crashes, is there any pattern that exists that would require you to provide some sort of safety improvement? So are there reasons behind the crashes that are correctable, right? Sight distance is a perfect example. There's crashes because people can't see around a turn or they can't see entering an intersection. That's something that can be corrected. But what you'll find here is that the crashes were improper careless turns, driving too fast for conditions, running red lights, for the only one period in the last 5 years at one intersection where there was more than 5 reportable crashes in one 12-month period.
I'll just add to that. If this project goes forward and they go into PennDOT's HOP review process, PennDOT's sort of the, I would say the head supervisor of safety on their roads. And when they conduct their review of the project, if they'll look at that data and they'll go back and look at their more detailed crash information they have. And if they have a concern that they want them to look at, they'll have them look at it. But PennDOT's sort of the policeman of the safety concerns on their roads.
Okay.
There's a hand raised on Zoom. Adrian.
Okay, go ahead. Is Adrian unmuted?
Yeah.
Nobody's looking at you.
Am I allowed to go?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Adrian Ames, West Lamplighter Lane in Lower Gwinnett. I'm just trying to gain clarification. I know a lot of the questions have been about the traffic. So while we're on the topic, how many days do you do the traffic study for? I'm hearing snippets and I wasn't sure if it's for one day, one snapshot, you stay there for a 12-hour period. Is this looking at Monday through Friday over the course of several months? I'm trying to figure out, is this an average number when you're counting cars? Because you did mention an anomaly. If there's something going on that day, then you would be asked to go back out. So I was just confused about how much data you're collecting to gather the information for the number of trips.
That's a good question. So as outlined in the study, so for the typical weekday peak hour, when I talk about the AM and PM peak hour, we usually collect traffic for one day. So we'll collect traffic all day out there and we'll boil it down to those 2 peak hours. Obviously, this traffic study adds another component to that, which is a Saturday, because of the retail aspect of the project. So we have one weekday, one Saturday, and then we had 2 other counts that were done. So essentially, if you add it all up, it's about 3 or 4 days of data. But with that said, when the data comes in and it's collected, we cross-check it and we look at it to see if it seems reasonable based on other historical data in the area. PennDOT has websites, they have databases that you can look at and just see if the counts seem reasonable. But on top of that, the way the data is collected is actually collected via video. So there's video cameras placed at intersections. They collect the data so that if we determine that there is an anomaly for some reason, that there was a heavy movement in one direction or one intersection experience a significant amount of volume when you look back and it doesn't seem that there should be a reason for that, we go back and we have the video that we can look and see if there were a reason
like a
for that
crash or
anomaly.
something.
A crash, traffic was detoured, there was a crash on 309 and they detoured everyone off the roadway, those type of things. So we can see that when it comes in on the data that there's significant anomalies in that regard. And then if that requires us to go back out and recount, we do. I will tell you that sometimes my technicians, when they go out and they set the cameras to do the traffic counts, they'll notice a road detour or a closure or things of that nature, and they'll abort the count altogether. So we want counts to be accurate as possible. We want to make sure we're not counting during snow conditions, or if there's holidays, things, those are the type of days we try to avoid. But again, we go out there, we collect the data, and we have a pretty good source of looking to see whether or not it seems reasonable. When I talk about fluctuations, traffic can fluctuate in any given day by 5%, is what it is. Tuesday versus Wednesday, there could be a 5% difference in traffic, right? But the hope is that we try to capture that in the background growth and the fact that we're also looking for purposes of this study 8 years into the future with respect to the traffic counts and the volumes that we would anticipate.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. Additionally, you mentioned the uncontrolled variables of the number of memberships with the YMCA, and I specifically remember that data being requested at that meeting. It was probably, I feel like, January of last year. I was a long time ago. So to echo what the other resident had mentioned, I forget the gentleman's name, was that data ever looked at and cross-checked? And I understand that there's that unknown of the number of memberships, but at the same time, there's the unknown of the retail space and what hours of operation they're going to be having. I know it's easier to predict what a tenant of these buildings might have. Normal people have usually daytime jobs, and they're not going to be adding too much to the traffic in the nighttime hours. But if you're talking about evening traffic, are there going to be restaurants and other facilities open until 1, 2 a.m. in the morning that are serving alcohol? Something else to consider is how often are these leases going to turn over? And at what point can you say we can predict what, memberships at the YMCA might, we can't predict that, but how can we predict what the traffic will look like with these retail centers? Can we look at the promenade and look at that as an example of what kinds of hours and how often are those spaces turning over? And are there going to be liquor licenses in any of those retail spaces that could potentially be operating later into the evening?
So I'll try to, I'll try to answer your question. I have two answers for you. Number one, and not to be blunt, I don't care how many memberships the YMCA has. That traffic is already counted in our traffic counts. So whether it's 10,000 memberships or 50,000 memberships, the traffic associated with the YMCA is captured in the traffic counts that we conducted in 2025. So whether their study predicted that or not, it doesn't matter to me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up as in I wanted you to include that in your traffic study. I was just saying, I know that's an unknown variable. I'm talking about there's also unknown variables in terms of the retail space and what kinds of tenants you'd have in those spaces and how that would potentially impact the traffic that has not been considered.
Sure. So the traffic data that we use to predict the volumes associated with certain uses is based on data that's been collected at other similar type uses. So when we look at the amount of traffic an office building will generate, there is published data that is an average of the data that's been collected at similar operating facilities, which is utilized to predict the future. Similar to residential, multiple categories of residential, multiple categories of office, multiple categories of retail. So retail, as you had mentioned, can turn over. You can have a hair salon in one day, a pizza shop the next day, whatever it may be. But that data is collected as it relates to other operating facilities, and that's the data that we utilize to predict the future. And then on top of that, as I mentioned before, even if I'm off slightly, we're agreeing to do a post-development trip generation analysis to confirm that what we're predicting is as accurate as you can be. And that's the hope. Obviously, if we had severely underestimated the amount of traffic, as is stated in Chad's letter, then we would need to look at providing some additional mitigation. YMCA, as far as I know, didn't have anything like that. They didn't have to do a post-development study. So we're going to do a post-development study and check what our projections are, what our predictions were to make sure that they're accurate. My opinion is that when I have gone out in the past and done post-development studies for other projects, that because of the various layers that we need to include in these studies, that most of the time, if not almost every time, we've overestimated the amount of traffic generated by the development in a lot of these. For instance, I'll tell you right now, there's the one Berkadia, that one office building that's there on the property right now. If you were to generate traffic based on the data, it would say it's about somewhere 80 to 100 trips in a peak hour, or maybe 70 to 80 trips in the peak hour. I believe the site's generating about 15 to 20. So significantly less than what the data would project. So again, layer on the retail use, layer on the fact that we're including a grocery store, which is a significant traffic generator from a data perspective, but in the reality, it's not as high as what we're projecting. When you add all those things in the office, the retail, and the residential, I believe that we're overestimating the amount of traffic to be generated. I could be wrong, but that's what the post-development study's for.
Okay, well, thank you for answering all those questions. I would just ask the board, and I'm sorry that I can't be there in person again with children conflicts with practices and sports games. I would ask the board to consider if this were to continue to pass through and be approved to develop, that you look at it in terms of the comprehensive plan for the township as an experiment to see how something with mixed use, high density potential, how that could impact an area that the argument has been it's a great place to build because it is so far removed from the town center. But to consider putting something like that in town center, we're going to see the impact, again, if it were to pass through, how that could potentially explode in the middle of Springhouse and cause significant impact. So my hope is that the board would consider moving forward, if they did, with the plan to then halt all other mixed use, high density developments until we really see as a true township community as a whole and really get to speak up and see what happened and look at it 5 years down the road and say, okay, we can't do any more mixed use. So I would hope that, again, we just consider one variable at a time. If you change too much at once, you can't go back and unring that bell. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Let's stop talking about traffic. I've had enough. Anyone else want to talk about traffic? I really don't.
One hand raised.
All right, well,
Al,
one last question. Al? Is it Al?
Sorry about that. My phone didn't want to unmute. Sorry, joined late. Al Hubs, 1436 West Lamplighter Lane. And you may have covered this already, and if so, I apologize. I'm just curious from a traffic perspective, and I know you don't want to talk about traffic anymore. If I were you, I wouldn't want to either. But was there any chance, was any of this data collected, and has it been during COVID? Because, at this point in time, you're seeing more and more companies starting to pull people back into the office. So I think our traffic numbers are off to begin with, which is one of the reasons you probably hear people saying, why does it seem like there's more traffic, more traffic, more traffic? I'm just curious if that's the fact, and if you can answer that by chance.
So none of the data that we collected in the traffic study was done during COVID or prior to COVID. The earliest the data was collected was October of 2024. In terms of the data that's utilized to determine the amount of traffic generated by the various uses, it's possible that some of that data was collected during COVID times, but I would tell you that the majority of that data was collected pre-COVID, which is why I'm so confident that we're overestimating the amount of traffic. There's been a shift, especially on the office market, residential market during, pre-COVID to today, whereas changed traffic patterns. And from a traffic perspective, at least from an office side of things, it actually has less of an impact on the roadway network than a traditional office did prior to COVID. So I can't answer that question 100% because, again, some of that data may be scattered in there. But I do know that there wasn't an abundance of data that was included when you're doing the trip projections from that COVID time period.
Thank you. A follow-up to that is, brick and mortar is dead. right? I've been in the IT space most of my working life. And for those of you who haven't caught up yet, you're going to need to. But brick and mortar from a building perspective is definitely dead. And take one look down Bethlehem Pike, old Bethlehem Pike, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of open space, a lot of retail space that's going to have to do something with and be developed in some way, shape, or form, probably. Just curious on your thoughts. I mean, I know there's still some validity to some buildings, but I mean, you see new buildings going up and you see lots of old ones standing vacant and they just become an eyesore. Any insight?
All I can say is I would have to respectfully disagree. I have never been busier. I'm looking at many different developments throughout the region, brick and mortar, banks, retail, restaurants, services, those type of things. So there is definitely a lot of that continuing. I can't speak to vacancies of buildings. That would it'd probably be on a case-by-case basis why a certain building is vacant versus proposal to develop a property down the street. Whether it's zoning, whether it's the building being antiquated, whether the property not being big enough, I don't know. But at the end of the day, like I said, from a development standpoint, there's a lot going on in this region and it continues to do so.
Okay, let's move on.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about something really, really exciting.
Oh, traffic?
Special conveyance. I
That's
don't
for
even know what it
financing.
means. So here's,
Okay.
I'll read at least a little bit of it.
Okay.
When a lot or lots are developed as mixed-use development, the creation of and conveyance of a lot or lots within such mix shall be permitted upon compliance with blah, blah, blah. Irrevocable cross easements, individual lots. Like what is that? And why is it in the ordinance?
It's to permit financing for like in a condominium space so that one building can be financed versus another building financed. They might be subject to the Condominium Act, which allows you to do that, but we would have to execute cross-access easements. So the whole property will function as a whole like it does now.
So I'll answer it a little more specifically. So a lot of lenders don't like to lend against apartments and against office buildings. So essentially for us to get loans, some will do mixed use. For instance, we have mixed use projects that have one loan on it. But we have to create a single purpose entity so that it's bankruptcy remote, meaning if they want to foreclose, they can foreclose on their piece of land. So more or less it allows us, so the apartments will probably be, typically they get financed by like Fannie or Freddie or HUD, in the long run. The office building will probably be a different lender. And then the retail may be with the office or maybe with the apartments, but it allows us to individually finance each of the parcels.
Okay, so it's not somehow like subdividing, like there's no way, like you're going to continue to be the owner of the entire parcel.
Correct.
So I guess the zoning ordinance being, it has to be plus 20 acres. You couldn't subdivide it even if you wanted to, right? Because
Correct.
you can never be less than 20 acres. Correct.
The Condominium Act, if something's subject to condominium, it still considers the outside edges of the lot. The condominium, I can make this a condominium. It's just a division of space and it's given a number, but it doesn't subdivide the land. So that's all this is allowing them to do, is allow parcel numbers and lots to be created under the Condominium Act for finance purposes.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions about special conveyance? You guys aren't interested in that? Very hot topic. Let's talk about signage. So was it Kevin from the Montgomery County Planning Commission? I was really excited about his letter when I read it this afternoon because he had a lot of the same concerns that I did. And one of them was,
And a lot of them have been addressed in the ordinance, so we could go through them.
well, yeah, but so like what I don't like, and he points it out, is we're changing the sign ordinance and we're changing the parking ordinance within another ordinance.
Well, this is a specific use. So the mixed use development in and of itself has a number of things going on one property. So it does make sense for you to have special criteria for many different things. parking, for instance, it's all going to be shared among the different users. The office is going to be closed while the restaurant's open at night, so that's why there was a look at some of the parking requirements. And he got into this double reduction thing. All they did was look at the restaurant and go, our current restaurant calculation isn't right. We fixed it. That's all it was. It wasn't a double dipping. And then they allowed a reduction if a parking study, and also by conditional use, it's a separate conditional use process. If you can show that you're entitled to a 20% reduction because you're sharing parking because the office is closed at 5 and everything else starts booming at that hour, you can go in and get a reduction. We haven't asked for those reductions. We've shown that we meet the parking requirement. But I think that was what his focus was. Like, why are we doing special things here? It's because we're having a mixed use development that we don't really have. Right now, shopping centers have one calculation and you have different users that can come and go. Whereas we have specific requirements on this property for each of the different uses, which I think is actually more conservative because we have to meet the code if a tenant moves, if that restaurant becomes retail, the parking calc changes and vice versa. So I actually think it's better because we took the time to look at it as opposed to the broad brush parking calcs that pertain to every scenario in the entire township.
Okay, well, we're going to explore that a little bit and see if we feel the same way.
All right.
So I get the multifamily portion, the off-street parking loading, like that belongs in this ordinance because it's the only place for it to, we're not redoing the parking ordinance as a result of this. But office building is already in the parking ordinance. So why would we have a different parking requirement than what's in the ordinance currently? Like, I guess my point is there are items that you have in here that already are covered in the parking ordinance. And I'm not sure why we would change the restaurant one parking. I understand the shared aspect of it.
Yeah.
But like, if the ordinance currently says that restaurants are supposed to have one parking spot per however many square feet, why are you,
2 per 200, it's something.
why are you proposing any different than what's already in our ordinance?
I'll tell you, as a drafter of ordinances for over 30 years, every time, it's like painting a room. You paint one room, now you're painting another room, and you end up rewriting the entire parking ordinance. So instead of taking a look at the entire parking ordinance, which ends up happening when you do stuff like this, it's like, oh, the restaurant really, that's kind of old. Well, we're going to look at the restaurants for every restaurant in the township. We really should take our time and think about that, because what works at Arpeggios may not work at whatever down here. We pause and say, we're creating an ordinance for this property under very specific circumstances with shared uses. What works under a shared use component? And that's why it makes sense to put them all here and not veer off. I don't want to have some things in here for a mixed use and then say, oh, but then we'll veer to the regular office under the office standard. You know what I mean? It's cleaner, it's more concise, it's better thought out.
Yeah, I think I would make the counter argument that when we have different parking requirements for the same building type in different ordinances, it becomes inconsistent.
Well, can I just add really quickly? So Spring Hill Shopping Center, which we own Giant, we have a retail shopping center, which we have parking spaces. If you go on that property, you can't find a spot, there's not overflow. This property, if you go on the retail, you can't find a spot, you overflow in the office. If you're in the office, you can't find a spot, you overflow in the retail. And their peak traffic times are typically different. So for us, the nice part is you can actually share parking between the different uses because they're not the busiest at the same time. And that's why, we can be more flexible with parking. And that's why we went for a parking ratio, because we have overflow parking next to the office building. And then we have overflow parking on the other side of the office building for the office on the retail. So
It's kind of like a different animal than you have anywhere else in the township.
And we do this all over. I mean, we're probably one of the most active mixed-use developers in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And, we see it all the time. I mean, we've redeveloped malls, we've developed, ground-up properties, we've redeveloped office buildings. And the truth is the shared parking is a nice thing because you don't have to build more parking than is needed.
I'm okay with that. Like, I think we support that statement. But maybe this is just the engineer in me thinking like, is it sloppy? Like, is there another way of doing it where do we put a factor on shared parking, but keep the parking spaces the same so that we're not changing the parking ordinance in other ordinances. So, I mean, we can talk, see what you think about it at some point, because we haven't talked about that yet, but.
Yeah, his only comment was about the restaurant. And I think it's because the restaurant is too much. The parking calculation is too great. And I think that was recognized when we went back and forth with staff in doing this, that we could probably fix that here. Let's take a moment as we do this in a shared environment. It makes sense. That restaurant count doesn't work here in a mixed use, but maybe it works in a standalone elsewhere in the township. So we don't want to rewrite the whole zoning ordinance because now we're looking at different types of restaurant, sit down, QRS, those in a strip where they're sharing in different restaurants under different circumstances.
Okay.
That's like a bigger animal than what we're doing here.
I actually didn't have a problem with the comment about it being a max of up to 20%, because in reality, the existing ordinance doesn't put a cap on it.
It doesn't what?
Doesn't have a cap. So I actually like having the 20% there. That's not a goal, but it's a cap.
Mhm.
You kind of stated it as a goal, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I think the trend now is less impervious. If we don't need blacktop, let's not put blacktop in, but it has to be supported by a traffic study and it has to go through this process, right? It would be a separate conditional use application would come before you guys where we would have to show you, we did a study and we don't need all this parking. And then we'd go to the supervisors for a hearing. So it's quite a hurdle. But there is logic. There's less impervious coverage, less stormwater management. We all kind of like that. So I think it makes sense to be in there.
Okay. I'm going fast here, but I don't have to. Does anyone else want to talk about parking? We can circle back if we want, but go ahead.
So the comment is, if you use both, it could be confusing.
That's my feeling. I don't know if I'm correct in that.
No,
But-
I don't think it's confusing at all.
Well, of course.
It's directly in the mixed use development criteria for mixed use development. Here are the parking regulations that apply for the uses that you're allowed to have in a mixed use development. It's one-stop shopping. It's right there in the ordinance.
I know, but it's like when we start talking about signage, the signage makes the case even further. Let's go to signage for a second. So you guys have the pylon sign of 200 square feet.
What letter is signage? Just help me out. What is it? J, thank you.
I don't have a J.
J?
So
Hey, I'm sorry, are you going off of signage that's in the ordinance or are you going through the Montgomery County Planning Commission letter?
neither.
Oh.
I guess I'm going through what's in the ordinance.
Okay, so J, when you say J, you're saying in the ordinance?
Yes.
Gotcha.
J
Oh,
in
we're-
the
okay.
proposed
I
ordinance.
was looking in the Montgomery County Planning.
I was
Commission letter.
confused. Okay.
So it says,
So where,
mixed-use development shall be permitted one pylon-free standing sign
oh, you're in.
not to exceed 20 feet in height and 200 square feet in area. Each tenant in the mixed-use development shall be permitted one wall sign not to exceed 40 square feet per building facade of the leased area facing the street. And no digital signs and digital signs are prohibited. So my understanding of our current signage ordinance, and signage is a constant struggle for Lower Gwinnett and other townships, I'm sure. I don't think we allow for a sign more than 40 square feet anywhere in the township. And so what concerns me is this is a big sign. I understand the concept of why you would want a big sign, but this is remarkably different than anything else that's currently in our signage ordinance. And I know it's not slipped in, but it feels like it's slipped in because it's here versus looking at it in a signage ordinance directly. And I know why you did what you did, but like, that's my concern. If I pulled the signage ordinance, I wouldn't know to come here to go look for your specific zoning district. And that's where I think it's sloppy, where we start now having things that are not in the correct ordinance, they're actually someplace else.
Would you feel better that if there was a section of this in the sign ordinance that said for mixed-use developments, the following signage shall apply?
I'm not trying to turn this into a science project, but absolutely yes, because at
So
least
it's
then all
not
the signage is in the right spot.
Okay, so it's really a location issue for you.
To me, it is. I
Okay.
mean, we can talk about the size
Yeah.
matters, but it's
I don't
So
remember
the
exactly what the
size-
wall sign.
size of the sign matters.
I would agree, this does not exist in your ordinance. You have permitted it at the Whole Foods Center by settlement. We're jumping off from that in that it's a similarly critical component of this project to have adequate signage. Again, we've moved it away from the street. We're behind the trees. We're away from the roads. We need to have adequate signage for people to know what's in the project. And in order to achieve that, this is what we need. And we are on 309. We're not, yes, you have other limitations that I think frankly are affecting some of the viability of Bethlehem Pike that people talk about all the time. There probably isn't adequate signage allowed in the ordinance for these types of uses elsewhere in the township.
I don't,
yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't
even
think-
really disagreeing. All I'm saying is that,
If you
well,
want
I'd
it
like it all in one
relocated,
spot.
I mean, me personally, I don't care. As long as, for us, it's the signage that matters, not where it is in the ordinance.
I have not had this conversation with anyone else, but
Well, as the person that reviews the zoning applications that come in, I would disagree. I like it better where they're locating it because it's all right there and you're not going back and forth. Yeah. It's
Okay.
really hard to follow, like, it's very confusing to follow from section to section from section, and then you update one section and you didn't realize that it was in these three other like it's difficult to do that. I think if all the criteria for the mixed use development that's permitted here is all within the mixed use, it makes it a lot easier when we're looking at the projects that the properties that fall under that.
well, that's not consistent with what I was saying.
Not at all.
So what,
Exactly the opposite.
exactly the opposite. So, but we should at least consider that if it's already in the ordinance, we shouldn't be changing it. So then maybe what I'm saying is if there's certain things that are in the ordinance that are already in the ordinance for parking and signage, I think we should be looking at to keep those ordinances consistent. So I understand the shared aspect of it.
Yeah,
but
it's a bigger conversation. I can't just look at a restaurant. I have to look at if I'm the zoning officer, like Jamie's going to sit there and say, well, this restaurant calculation works here on the mixed use development, but I may not think it works well here, and here. So that's a broader conversation. You're talking hours of meetings, many gyrations of a zoning ordinance, much bigger conversation than
Okay.
this.
all right, I won't belabor it. We can talk about it more. Okay.
And I think the goal is to have it organized. Like, you don't want it to be disorganized and then you're, but that I think we can work through. I think.
Okay.
But there was a parking, so the parking criteria is contained within the mixed use section, but then you do jump out of there and make an adjustment to the parking ordinance though. Yeah, with the parking structures.
In the mixed use.
No, you actually, I think it's like there's a section, you have a section in here where you're actually amending the parking chapter with the parking structures, which is, you kind of go off course with how it was prior. Oh, what I have up here on the screen is the current MF3 ordinance as it is today, and then the red is what's being proposed by BET. What ordinance language?
Right, but the garage structured parking section that you're talking about was, I believe it's a general criteria that's applicable to all parking structures regardless of where they are. And while we provide for the structure in the mixed use development stuff, we felt the need to also address the fact that it existed somewhere else because the somewhere else would have precluded what we were doing,
Okay.
which is why the edit was made twice there.
Okay, so it was for consistency that you made the modification in the other part.
Now, the sign we're talking about is the sign shown in these renderings on the building.
I don't know that they're to scale. They're not to scale, are they?
Well, those,
So that-
those
But
would be those would be the 40 square feet per tenant per facade
So
type signs.
that's-
Then there's also the pylon sign.
That's the sign we're talking.
That's the
about.
wall
And
sign.
The ordinance says a street, so it's the street that the building is on, not some other street. Meaning that there's not a separate sign somewhere else. This is
Yep.
attached to the building right there. So it's
There would
both
also
sides.
be a separate freestanding sign away from the buildings that's not represented in any of that.
This is not freestanding, this is attached to the building.
Right, that's a wall sign, wall signage on the building. So there's that's it. We have signs up for each tenant on the building and then one freestanding sign at the street.
That was my next question. There's going to be a sign on the street
Yes.
with identifying who is actually in this area. Does this address that sign or does it fall under?
No, it's right here. That's the mixed use shall be permitted one pylon freestanding sign not exceeding 20 feet in height and 200 square feet in area. It's J. Back page.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Sorry. I'm sorry, Mimi. What? Oh, yeah.
So is there going to be one sign with all of the tenants or all the shops, or is it going to be?
Yes.
10 different signs?
One sign
One.
broken up into pieces, total of which would be 200 square feet.
Think like what's near CVS.
It's almost identical to the
Yeah,
one at the Whole Foods CVS Center.
Yeah.
Same size.
Well,
Right across from home.
yeah.
What
Okay.
Does our sign ordinance say about that kind of a sign?
It doesn't exist. The only reason why they have it is because they sued the township and that was part of the settlement.
Sign.
It is a big sign.
Do we know how big that sign is?
It's the
it's-
square footage.
I'm pretty sure it's 200 square feet. It's not big by industry standards.
Yeah. Well, and
It is 200 square feet. I've
the part I guess that concerns me, and again, we've talked about the signage ordinance for a decade, is we don't really have any standards for a 200 square foot sign, monument sign. Like, it can't be the sign that's at Trader Joe's where you have, I mean, we already said it can't be digital, but you go on that sign, you see that sign at night and it's like a Christmas tree. I mean, it couldn't be any brighter with, like, there feels like we should put some guardrails on that sign. So is the signage, it's still conditional use?
No.
So it's,
Oh, all of this is under a conditional use, all the criteria.
but are you going to have the sign figured out by then? Like
We're just-
sometimes a sign is like just something that happens after the fact, like,
Well, we're just saying we won't go any bigger. We'll agree to these parameters, 40 square feet for each tenant and 200 at the street.
Okay.
Signage is always last because if we wait for the tenants to come, you know how it works.
yeah, but like, how's it being lit? Like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that since it's not in the ordinance, I feel like if we had some ways.
Don't we have, Jamie, are there general criteria as far as signs?
Mm-hmm.
How they're lit, how they're constructed? All of that is still in the ordinance that we would follow.
Yeah, but he's saying you're putting it in.
Yeah, so, but you're like, are you a lawyer and you're just doing an end around? And since this is all you have to follow, because this is all that's in it, like, it doesn't
Not
reference,
referencing back to this.
it doesn't reference back to the sign-ins ordinance.
If you'd like, we can add that all other parameters relative to the construction of the sign shall apply. We could add something like that.
Okay, I like that.
All right. We can do that.
Jamie, now do you understand why I wanted it?
Yeah, I
Signage
see.
ordinance? Okay,
That's-
thank you. Somewhat vindicated.
1 point for Craig.
Okay. What else can we talk about?
question raised about the location of the refuse trailers.
Okay.
Should be more defined. Will that take place during our review of the specific plan?
So if you want, the county letter, I have something to say about each one. If you want to, just touch on them. So for the, in B on page 3, they talk about there being specific criteria. There actually are specific criteria because it's all in accordance with section 1276.09, which is all the criteria, your lot size, your setbacks, your height, your impervious, your building, all of the bulk criteria is the specific criteria. There's a specific reference in the ordinance that you build in accordance with 1279.09. That's right next to mixed use development in the permitted uses. So we do have that. The master plan requirements talk about pedestrian movement between buildings, buildings and parking areas. So the master plan requirements are set out in the ordinance. They really have to do with architecture and connectivity. They want the elevations on all sides of the building, the materials that'll be used, and then the rendering shall show conceptual connections to existing public trail network, which is immediately and directly adjacent to the mixed-use development. So we have that. When we'll really get into the stuff you guys like is land development, you know, so that'll get spruced up. But I think the master plan does address what's necessary as far as a cohesive development and interconnection. And I think that we show that.
Okay.
Open space. So we do have the amenities and place gathering spaces for our residents within the building. It's built into the lifestyle choice. However, we think that we can add maybe some benches and refuse areas on those trail systems, maybe back in that pollinator garden. We can add places where people maybe can sit along the trail system. We can do something like that to add to that.
Okay.
They talk
Is that
about,
something that we should add to the ordinance or like?
I personally, I think,
be a
I think it's
land
detail that comes out in the conditional use plan. I mean, this is why we simultaneously filed the conditional use plan with all the exhibits that support all of this information. So if we find through that review that we need more information on where the benches and trails and stuff are located on that conditional use plan, because that would presumably be approved along with it, locking all these criteria in.
we'd
And
like
we-
to
and we
bring
can
that
add
back
that.
to you at the next meeting and show you that we
Okay.
can comply. And then there's always land development. We'll be back through this system with you guys for that review and approval. So if you think that it needed tweaking, then you'll hit us up again during land development.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, there is a part of me that would like to have a tight ordinance that isn't solely predicated on the laziness of a conditional use application where it's,
Laziness.
well, it is in a sense, because the conditional use ends up being the document that overrides the zoning ordinance in some respects and says, this is what we're going to do. Whereas if the zoning ordinance was strong enough, you wouldn't need the conditional use document to back it up.
I disagree.
Okay.
Typically, a conditional use is actually.
Oh, use the mic, Mike.
Thanks. I mean, typically, in my experience, a conditional use is actually the ability to look at a site-specific and put site-specific criteria beyond what the generalities of a zoning ordinance has. So if the supervisors want to say, you got to do your 200-foot sign, but it's got to be purple, they can put that criteria on there where the zoning ordinance wouldn't say that. So I think the fact that you're making it go through a conditional use actually gives more control to the township than less control.
I don't disagree with that. My concern is mostly if something falls through the cracks and if we're not thinking about something, then the conditional use document ends up being the end all be all. And so if we miss something and you have it correct in the conditional use and we didn't get it right, then we're kind of screwed. And so that's why I've been spending so much time looking at this ordinance directly, because I want to make sure that the ordinance stands on its own.
I understand what you're saying to me.
And I'm not this, I certainly agree that conditional use is a great tool to be
Yeah.
site specific. I'm
And
just,
it's something we sometimes are like, oh, let's just put it in the ordinance. We don't have to go through the conditional use process because it is that added layer. I think this is the only MF3 in the township. So we do have that going for us. And we have the conditional use. We're talking about a couple benches to add some seating area. You could require that during land development in any case. So I don't know that this is something we necessarily need to write in.
okay.
Okay. The density bonus, that's them just saying they like it and they think that it's a nice tool to encourage people to do extra things like additional open space
We might
gathering
have enough
spaces.
momentum that we can come back to
Yeah,
that.
I think we're
Okay.
good there. The off-street parking and loading, we'd had that conversation. The architectural theme. This comment, something about the existing building. So we don't want to design around the existing building because then we really are not being very creative. That building is older. So we are going to be consistent with the architectural style that you saw in the new construction. And you'll see that in the master plan, those architectural renderings have been submitted. So I don't know that I agree with him looking for standards for the existing building or the ability to reface that entire 75,000 square foot building. That's
Right.
just not possible. The parking structure, they talk about that there's a building coverage.
Before we leave that.
Yeah.
The one comment was,
Mhm.
how does the development that you're proposing architecturally blend with the building you're gonna leave? Are you gonna alter the office building to make it look?
We're not,
more-
we're not altering the office building. The office building does have a lot of glass, right? Which we are replicating. But to be honest, Rich, we're trying to do something that's more conducive to Lower Gwinnett style that you see down in Spring House with the Wissahickon schist, with the glass, with the metal seam, and that more, and the residential breakup of the apartment building like Michael discussed.
I don't disagree with the way you're proposing this. I'm just responding to the question that he raises about the existing building versus what you're proposing and how it architecturally blends together other than connecting over the sidewalk.
I think the simple answer is it doesn't right now. There may be some color treatments that we can do to that building to make it blend a little bit better. It is hidden in the back relative to the outside world. I mean, sure, once you're in the project, you can see it. But, to Kristen's point, it's not the kind of thing that we can reface an office building. Office buildings like to have windows all the way around for the occupants inside. You're not going to break that down to a residential scale or even a commercial building scale. But we can probably do something with the colors on the building at least to try to make it more compatible, bringing it into the tans
address
and out of the grays.
Address it some way, it would
Sure.
move to answer that question. Going back to the open space, did we talk about open space yet, or is that down below?
We can talk about it.
The swimming pool was considered part of the open space, I would, and a common place for people
An amenity.
to gather, amenity. How did you determine the size, or how do you determine the size of the swimming pool?
Oh, interesting. Michael?
I mean, truthfully, we look at the architecture and in the courtyard, we just maximize, combination of seating and size of the swimming pool and just try to build as kind of a larger style pool and seating around it that can accommodate the average number of tenants we usually have that use a swimming pool, which is usually, you never get more than 20 or 30 people there. So that's kind of a starting point. But yeah, and we actually hire a specific pool designer and they know the makeup of the property. And what you saw with 555, we actually had a separate pool designer from the architect that kind of developed that because people want to look at that area and that's our selling point. We leave that pool open sometimes 9 months out of the year because if you walk in and you see it, you want to live there. If you see a covered pool, you're like, it doesn't look great. And actually a lot of the apartments face it and those internally facing apartments tend to lease up very easily. So It's a pool designer that really comes up with the idea, and we give them the number of people that we think will be there.
I mean, it looked like a large pool, but maybe that's just.
Yeah,
the
it will be a
dimension.
large pool, correct, yeah.
So that's going to be exclusively an area that's fenced off.
It's actually inside the building
architecturally
courtyard, yeah.
Nice, and it's primarily for the. Or
Residents.
Really only for the residents.
And we allow them to bring a guest or two, if they want to bring their kids, their grandkids. Sometimes people bring that.
So that could be an area that residents would.
Correct.
meet and-
Correct.
And say hello to each other.
Yes, yes.
Are there any other amenity areas just exclusive for residents or?
So we have two other courtyards, mini courtyards. Why don't you kind of talk about those?
Yeah, so in the plan, there's actually 3 interior courtyards. There's the one larger one, and then there's 2 smaller ones. And then I'm not going to trouble Jamie to go back to the plan, but so we have several outdoor amenity spaces that are within the footprint of the building. We also then have probably on the order of 15,000 square feet of interior amenity space in the building, which again is for the use of the residents. The entrance lobby, we have game rooms, and I think we skipped through the slides real fast. Tonight, I think we showed them to you the first time of our typical setups where we have a small gym, we have a pool table area, ping pong table area, TV rooms, just work pods, work from home pods, and just a variety of different amenities that everybody has use of and kind of it's their second home away from home within the building.
So exclusive of the pool, is there a certain square footage of amenity, common space for residents?
Yeah, it's on the order of about 15,000 square feet.
That might go a long way to answer some of these questions because
Just for example, like the CVS is 12,000 square feet, so it's bigger than a CVS. It's large. And we split it up, and it's our selling point. When you walk in, you see it, you're like, wow, I want to live here. And I would tell you, probably 50% of the residents use it, 50% will never set foot in it. But it's, you got to build the better, the better property that brings more people in. So
then there's the area where people are pulling in to the commercial area. And there's a discussion here about what open space and people who go there to, I guess, eat pizza or office workers coming out to go buy something, maybe lunch. Is there a common area out there that's going to be?
I think we have to look at that. We're going to look at that comment and see if we can do it. Outdoor seating areas potentially, and some common maybe picnic tables and things like that, that really work with the office workers. And yeah.
So we specifically design wider sidewalks in front of the retail spaces to encourage outdoor seating outside of any restaurant that we would end up with. And then, as we mentioned, the pollinator garden, that's going to be connected by a trail network. So if office users want to go for a walk around the property and hang out back there.
It's kind of a seasonal thing. You wouldn't want to do that in January when it's 40.
Not this past January, no.
I think maybe defining those a little more carefully and square footage wise, that kind of addresses that issue. Not that I'm suggesting you need more, but maybe when you look at it, you will add something.
All right, I'm going to try to talk fast for a couple of things here,
Yep.
just to see if we can get through them. So the current zoning district is D1. In it, it has some provisions that are not in the new ordinance that you've done, but kind of gets to my point of, I really wish it was in the ordinance. Example being, the following uses shall be permitted by conditional use on properties in excess of blah, blah, blah. When the conditional use application is accompanied by a full traffic study demonstrating that there will be, after the proposed use is in operation, either less than full letter grade, like just the actual traffic study requirement, I think should be in the ordinance.
The criteria for a traffic study you want in the mixed use
Well,
ordinance?
I don't know where else, are you required to do a traffic study based on this current ordinance?
No, probably not.
Okay, so
When are we required to do a traffic study? In a certain land development application, we would need to do a traffic study.
There's general requirements in the SALDA for when a traffic study is required based on number of units for residential or square footage for non-residential. This project far exceeds those requirements.
Okay.
We just, it's when staff took a look at this, we pointed out the same thing you're pointing out right now, though.
Okay. All right. That makes it valid. Okay. So we'll add that.
So I'm sorry that just so I'm clear, you want to add traffic study criteria to the conditional use requirements here for mixed use. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I got it.
Or cross-reference to the existing one.
Add or cross-reference. Okay. But where were you reading from?
I'm reading from the existing D1.
From D1. Okay.
Okay. So another thing that I like about D1 is it has this whole list of special requirements. Signs shall be permitted in accordance with chapter 1292. See? And then it has a whole bunch of other things in there. You talk about building spacing, hazardous uses, outdoor land use. You mentioned the public water and sewer, I think, in the current ordinance. But I think we should go through, one in particular is site lighting.
Right. Well, you have lighting requirements in your saldo.
Agreed, but like, maybe this is better. The way it talks about it.
You
So
mean no projection of lighting or other elements above the required guardrail height on a roof deck?
No,
parking structures?
when lights go on, when lights get turned off, that kind of stuff. I'm not saying we need to debate it all right now, but can we go through that portion of the ordinance and see what applies? And maybe start adding it to the list?
Go ahead.
I don't think we should do it.
The D1 in front of me. so
You
I
don't,
know.
and we don't have to do it right now. You guys can
Okay.
talk about it.
All right. What specific items in D1 that might be also best suited to be in the mixed use development criteria?
So Jamie and I have been looking at the ordinance anyway. We have some questions about sections, some suggested language anyway that came from the board discussion. So we can take a look at all of this, the D1,
Okay.
all of this discussion. And so let us come back to you before you spend time, let us come back and then react to that.
You'll give us stuff and then we'll look at it. Perfect. And so you'll look at what he's talking about,
Yes,
the D1
absolutely.
criteria. Okay.
Okay.
And we'll take a look at the sign ordinance and parking and kind of just really think it through too of like, whether it's just a reference like you talked about in the special requirements or at least from a staff perspective, and we'll get a draft going that way.
Okay. I know we've at least asked for a list of significant waivers.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
We haven't done land development yet.
Well, I get that, but like, I mean, you can see where you're headed.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, you're not going to ask for a tree waiver.
I don't know. Not where the existing building is that we're taking down, but maybe out in the front, there might be some trees. But we're going to supplement in the front, so I don't know how it's all going to shake out until we do all that.
Okay. Trees are our friends.
I know. I've worked here for a
The
long
wind
time.
has shifted.
Trees are different here in Lower Gwinnett than any
It
other
goes
place.
back and forth, but trees are on the in right now.
Yeah.
So,
And yeah, and they're expensive to take down. We don't want to take them down
okay.
if we can avoid it. But I don't know to answer your question. What, maybe widening curb sidewalk along the front, but we're going to do a trail and we're going to add a left turn lane elongation along the front. There's going to be road improvements, like that's the only thing that comes to mind. Preliminary and final at the same time, maybe a
Whoa.
15-inch pipe instead of an 18. Those
So-
come to mind.
All right. Well, so we're going to see you again, but like, I guess the point is, and we just did this with another property that came through. We were able to, before their zoning approval happened, we were able to kind of walk through all the things that we needed to go through with them before we kind of knew what the end was. And I understand that this is a little bit bigger than what we're talking, the other parcel that I'm talking about. But like, if you guys come in here with 1,000 waivers and are really looking to change land development because of whatever, I don't think that's going to be looked on very kindly. So I'm just maybe pointing that out right now.
Well, and I understand we don't want to be at the end of the project and run into a roadblock. that is
We'll,
that
we'll,
big.
we will take a look at Saldo and see if there are any dramatic departures that we expect to need. I don't envision that there are, but
Okay.
we'll take a look.
That's all I'm asking for.
I can't say though, like, we're going to do infiltration testing and tell you whether we need, an alternate stormwater design or not.
Well, stormwater has to comply one way or the other. We got to get an NPDES permit. So, but to your point, we'll look through and see, what trees or, any other things
It's
that
just,
are hot buttons.
let's
Hot
not
button
have a hot
items.
button topic.
Okay.
Okay. I know, you've already said that you're going to put sprinklers in the parking garage.
Mhm.
I think that should be in the ordinance.
It
I think
doesn't,
should
it
say-
doesn't need to be. It's in your fire code.
I know, but
The fire
my-
code is going to supersede anything that we do here.
in my other life, I'm on a project where, somehow we're not putting sprinklers in a parking garage. And so, I don't know the particulars on how that happened,
If it meets open air requirements,
Who are we calling tomorrow?
but the point is
this
the
will
point
never
is-
meet the requirements to not have sprinklers.
What?
In this,
Yeah, but
in
it
this
wouldn't hurt.
scenario, will never meet the
Because
requirements
it
to
doesn't
not
have
have.
open air.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. I understand that. That explains why that other property probably doesn't have it, but I will tell you that the township was very, very surprised when they found out they weren't getting sprinklers.
Hmm.
So maybe you guys can at least take that under advisement. All right, now we're going to start drifting back into some hard topics.
Oh, goodness.
Do we care about the ratio of 2 bedrooms to 1 bedrooms?
Do you care about the ratio?
If you don't-
I'm
Mr.
asking,
Watt-
I mean, I don't know, what are the ramifications as that, like, so I'll give you an example. For assisted living facilities, we have all these different requirements for whether it's personal care or assisted
Yep.
living or independent living. I don't know why those matter, but they do.
Well, because the market dictates that. And every time Folkways tried to do a master plan, the market changed and we couldn't do a master plan because of things like that. So sometimes he'll tell me that we need more 2s, sometimes more 1s, based on what the market's telling them they need. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, the irony is older people when they move in, and this will be 30 to 40% over 65. They like to have 2 bedrooms. As people age, I mean, I have a sleep issue. A lot of people have sleep issues, and the men typically will go at some point in the night to the other bedroom because they can't sleep. So
Or they're used to more space.
you're used to
of
more
going to
space.
bigger
Yeah.
houses.
So, I mean, we just put in, I think we put in no more than 60% will be 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
In the ordinance. If you don't care, I mean, I'm restricting myself with that. So.
Well, actually, I don't think it says anything specifically. It was more of, I just got the ratio off of one of the drawings or some document, or maybe it was just on the floor plan.
Right.
I'm just wondering whether or not does it change? Matt, does it change any of your calculations depending on how many cars? That doesn't matter.
Because
Will not change the results of the traffic study.
Okay. So, I mean, if you think about it, you could theoretically meter the number of units by adding more 2 bedrooms to get your perceived density down. Could you not? If you had, if you're at 278 units and 60% of them are 2 bedroom and 40% of them are 1 bedroom, can you basically say that a 2 bedroom is twice the size of a 1 bedroom? Not quite, but
no,
it's maybe 1.5 times. So like,
what I can say is you're more likely to have 2 people in a 2 bedroom than a 1 bedroom. I mean, we find, and this really goes with the parking ratio, it's kind of 1.5 per unit because, you just never know. Some people rent a 2 bedroom unit with 1 person. So.
but if you change the number of 2 bedrooms and that increased, would the number of units go up or down?
It doesn't change it. We would just, you just squeeze them into the, the same space because it's all the same space.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're kind of answering my question. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
All right, let's talk about workforce housing. So I don't think I have any-
We call it attainable.
I don't have really much of a desire to talk about the politics of it, but I do have an interesting idea. And Matt just walked out. Come on back. I'm going to tie you into this. You thought you were out. I'll look and see if the Phillies are winning. So, oh, okay, good. Well, you could at least keep us in. So everyone seems to be concerned about all the traffic going towards Bethlehem Pike. And data supports that to some respects. There's definitely traffic going that way. The workforce housing, what I think is kind of interesting is doesn't mention where the person has to work in order to qualify. So what I was thinking was, what if we limited it? And you can't exclude Lower Gwynedd, right? Because it's for us. But what if it was only Lower Gwynedd? You notice no one goes north to Montgomeryville. So you'd say, okay, maybe Montgomery Township and then Upper Dublin Township. So that if you were a resident in just those three townships and you qualified for the workforce housing because of your income, then you would get the discount and you would kind of like be incentivizing traffic to go away from the township. I don't even know if it's legal, but like I was thinking like, is there?
I don't think it's legal.
But
You
like,
let's just stop there.
but at least can you guys at least give us credit for thinking about something that might actually be helpful? I mean, like
You want
that's
to dictate where the people work who live in the apartments in the workforce housing
Yeah.
units? No, no, no,
not.
no, you can't do that.
But the traffic would go in the opposite
You'd be
direction.
discriminating against people. That's not the idea.
Well, you're discriminating anyway. If someone makes too much money, they don't qualify.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
No.
All right. So that's
Clever,
clever.
creative, but illegal.
Okay. All right. Well, it's on the record now because it.
For the record, I disagree.
Very good.
Oh, that's nice.
That was
Way
Robert
to sell
Sawyer.
me out. Nice. Maybe this will be my last meeting. Yeah, I'm
I
done.
have,
Go ahead.
I thought the workforce housing was supposed to be for people that live in Lower Gwinnett Township.
No, it's for people who want to live in the apartment building.
Live and work in the township. They
No.
don't have to work.
No, it's
So-
people who wouldn't normally be able to afford to live in the building that are given the opportunity to live in the building by having a discounted rent.
So-
And it's not much of a discount if you look at our data, which
So they
is
could-
on one of our slides, by the
So they
way.
could work in Philadelphia.
Sure,
Okay. All right.
quite a commute, but sure.
Well, they have to make enough money to pay the rent.
Yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
the lower ones. They got to work someplace.
yeah, these aren't cheap. Even with the discount, you're still over 20 some $100, right? So we do have a slide for that. Towards the end, Jamie? Yeah, keep going. We did a comparison of regular rate and then someone who qualifies. There you go. So
And it's approximate income level, but so for one person, one bedroom, it's about $80,300. Just for example, that's my daughter. She's 29 years old, lives in Upper Dublin right now, could live in, she makes around that amount of money. 2 bedroom, 2 people would have to make $103,000. And then the rent's 2008 compared to 2,500 and 2,583 compared to 3,000. So yeah, it's about a $500 discount per month.
Maximum.
It's approximate. So the other thing so it's complicated because for them to qualify, it can't be more than a third of their income. So if you look at that, it's about $24,000 for rent. Times 3 is 75,000. So they can make between like 75 and 80. So to qualify, you got to make like 75,000. You can't make more than 80,000. So it's a very thin range. We're kind of at risk here because we got to find people in that range that can move in. So, and then as far as the 2,500, it's 2,600, that's 25,000, about 30. So you got to You can be between like 91,000 and 103,000 to be able to qualify for that unit, to get the $500 discount. So, it is a narrow range, but it's real income. I mean, it's people with good jobs that are, making a decent amount, obviously.
Yeah, nurses, teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the
Digital
target-
advertisers.
If the target population for this project are retirees, is that their retirement income? So
They wouldn't be the people who
They would be the
qualify.
people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is only 10% of the units for these, so those
Yeah.
people would not qualify. 90% of the units would be occupied by the retirees
Well, not all retirees, but
or whoever
Yeah.
who doesn't qualify.
Okay. Another.
Well, I think what you're saying
Yeah.
is an interesting point. You
Yeah.
have to be gainfully employed.
And is that?
you have to be gainfully employed to be able to
So
take
I don't
part
know
of
if
these
it,
units.
I don't know if it's that specific. I mean, I understand that we all understand that that's what it says, but that really isn't what it says.
Well, let me work on it then. I'll take a look at it and make sure
Okay.
it's legally drafted within, the correct way. I'll look at that.
So it's only for people that are working.
Correct.
W-2 showing that they work, as opposed to someone that's retired.
Correct.
Living off of investment income or so.
That's your point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Full-time-
W-2 income. Yeah.
Full-time
Yes.
gainfully employed.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the maximum amount that they could make.
That is
So they-
correct. So I say approximately, but that's a maximum amount, but there's a range. It's not much less, but yeah, there's a very narrow range that we
So
can.
if they're making less than that, and they apply for.
They wouldn't qualify according to our standards because it can't be more than a third.
Standard.
Yeah.
that they have an income.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand what I looked up, 100% of the household median income of Montgomery County that shows up on the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency's website as of 2024 was 111,915.
You can't make more than that.
That's the 100%.
Well, Jamie she had hers. You looked it up recently. I think it was a little less than that.
Yeah, it was like 99, I think.
Yeah, it was like 90.
Or 95 maybe.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
that high. It's a little higher than ours, but not that. It changes every year. So.
So that apartment that you had for $2,550 or whatever, how low would you lower the rent?
Oh, we can go back to the slide. It was basically $500 discount you get. So the market rent is 2,500. The rent we would charge them is 2,008. Yeah.
$1,008.
Yes. Yes. So it's about a $500 discount per month. So $6,000 a year.
So then you would look to see if they have enough income to pay the rent. and
Correct.
Buy.
And they can't exceed, 100% of the maximum the attainable income for Montgomery County.
So who at the end of the year monitors your?
So the township was very concerned about that. So we basically have to keep records. And then we have an outside firm that has agreed to audit us and give a letter to the township saying that we've met the requirement.
So is the township in any way
Qualified?
not qualified, but are they involved in, let's say there's a mistake or there's some complaint that this is not being fair, is the township going to be drawn into this by that allowing workforce housing to be developed and they feel they're not getting a fair shake by the developer or the movement?
So there is a requirement for a declaration of covenants to be reported against the property that include these. And that will be reviewed and approved by the township solicitor. Reported against the property. So that runs with the land and this program. So then we're saying we'll comply with the rules that are in that declaration that requires annual reporting.
So the information at the end of the year is submitted to the township and we have to review it.
Correct. It'll be a letter. So, almost like, we have to submit an audit. Well, no, they don't review. We submit a letter saying we comply. So the firm that we're talking to, they do this for lots of affordable and attainable housing. It's Eisner Amper. So like when you watch the Emmy Awards or whatever, and they say audited by Pricewaterhouse to make sure it's affected. So we have a major accounting firm that does this for about 1,000 customers, and they will review all the documentation. They will go to the property, they will look at the records, and they will submit a letter to the township that, basically we comply with it or we don't comply with it. If we don't comply, we have to figure out, get back into compliance. So
What's the recourse of someone who feels they're not being treated correctly?
that's a good
Do they come
question.
to the township? Do they go to you? Do they?
Let me figure out what that is because I know other people do this. This is new to us so I'll definitely be able to answer that question because
I would assume it's the fair housing.
yeah, it would be a violation.
agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Organization that keeps track of this, or is
We have 3 different people we talk to that all do this. So what's that?
It would be an auditor. So just like I have a license and I have to comply by certain rules and regulations under my license, just like Matt is a civil engineer and he has a seal and he has a license and he'll lose it if he doesn't follow the rules. The auditors do the same thing. They are regulated by certain laws under Pennsylvania. So if they attest that these are the results we found, their license is on the line if they don't. Anybody's able to check their work, but basically their audit, and if they're in good standing with the government agency that regulates auditors, that means something if they sign off on it.
Is it something that the township's auditors in turn would check?
I don't think so. I'm sure they wouldn't want to get involved in it.
So this wouldn't be anything that would allow somebody who lived in Lower Gwinnett their whole lives, to be able to take advantage of.
No, they could, sure, if they meet the criteria.
If
Anybody,
they weren't, if they're retired.
It's workforce.
Okay,
It's workforce.
right,
Full-time gainfully employed,
right.
generally.
There's plenty of retired people that still work.
Right, part-time or something.
Right.
True.
I'd be one of those.
Is section E going to be changed with
Sec-
respect to the number of residential units? When we
The
were
workforce
talking earlier about-
housing declaration of covenants document. It needs to be consistent with whatever the final density is in the ordinance.
oh, I see what you're saying. You said
The
E. You meant
declaration,
H?
the declaration itself just talks about the process and the rates. I don't think it talks about the density.
It's in there.
I see it in
Does it?
H
It's
right
item-
above it.
Item E, it's in there.
Okay, I don't remember. Well, it'll need to be.
Go ahead. Question?
None.
So the question was, is this on? No. Yeah, the question was, what advantage is it to us? No advantage. I mean, essentially, it's something looked for by the state, by the county, potentially the township, and we're just trying to kind of accommodate the request. We will make less money. We will have a record-keeping requirement, and we will have an auditor fee. So, but this is something that's kind of been a general mandate among most government bodies right now. So we're just trying to comply with that. Yeah.
All right, so all that's true, but it is not completely woe is me. So I know, but
No, I'm just saying that we we'll do what we have to do to comply with this because it's something that's out there and the, government bodies have
So-
asked for it.
So the bonus is 1.5. The requirement is 10%. So just based on the current setup, it's 27, 28 units that would have to qualify for this. But you're getting 36 units. So you are getting a bonus of 8 or 9 units that won't have to comply with this requirement. So by having the workforce housing requirement, they get a bonus density of 1.5 units per acre. Of that 1.5, not all of it goes towards workforce housing. There is a portion that is not workforce housing. Yeah, so that's I would say there is a little bit of a kicker in
Incentive.
there.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you operated workforce housing and other apartments?
No.
Because I'm looking at paragraph 2, section E. It says, if no qualified households applied for workforce housing for 6-month consecutive period, you then can start renting out the vacant workforce housing units to non-workforce housing individuals. So the question is, no one knows that workforce housing is available. I mean, how do you market that? If you don't market it, then they'll be empty and then you'll be renting them at regular rate.
Yeah, I mean.
I'm reading from the proposed ordinance.
No, you're reading.
No, your workforce housing declaration covenants. So,
No, I'll have to fix that. Yeah, we cannot be incentivized to not rent them out. That'll defeat the purpose. So yes, we'll have to address that. Let me look at it.
just trying to understand that, how do people know that this exists?
Well, we have to tell, the truth is we're going to try to fill these up, sooner than later so we can comply with it. And we don't want to be in violation of fair housing. So if somebody comes in and they seem like to fit the criteria, we'll probably push them into one of these units if we can. But yeah, we can't be incentivized to try to just turn them into regular units. That's not a good policy decision. So.
Okay, so I want to understand how this paragraph operates. Does it mean that if you do get somebody within 6 months and you have 10 vacant units and you have one rented, if it's within 6 months of that one being rented, the clock moves to another 6 months, or is it set with each individual unit?
I think it's with each individual unit. Our idea with that at least was we wouldn't have to leave them vacant forever if we couldn't find people to rent in that category. But let me look at the wording because I understand your concern. It makes sense. I can't be incentivized to try to take these off the workforce housing situation. So let me see if I can put in some language to remedy that.
Okay, and maybe even go a step further. Is Unit 106 always workforce housing, or can it move around?
Yeah, I mean,
No, they can, we're not designing units differently within the building so that it's fluid.
Okay.
So that if the next one becomes available and we have a person waiting for a workforce housing unit, that can become their unit.
Okay, and they won't all be on the first floor
They won't.
facing the
Nope.
trash cans?
No, all the units will be,
Okay, I'm just asking.
no, it's a fair.
Someone will ask it. Okay.
It's a fair question. We had a lot of conversations about that and it was not worth the effort because if you made them lesser units, I mean, first of all, the ordinance precludes you from making them appreciably lesser. And if you made them lesser units, you would then have a harder time renting them at a market rent if you don't find the people to fill them. So we've already decided against that.
Why do you have this language in here then?
Maybe they don't.
The language is in there because to his point, if we get to the end of the job, we've rented 250 of the 278 units and there's nobody that's meeting the qualifications or interested, we need for next 6 months, we need to be able to then rent them.
No, maybe I'm not following. It says here that you have the right to make these units not quite as.
It does say that. It does say that. We've made the decision not to do that.
So you're going to remove that?
No, it was submitted with their conditional use application. Oh.
I think,
Will everybody else have stainless steel appliances and these are going to be,
no.
made out of white or whatever that.
Well, that's fine. I mean, it does counter the argument that that'll move around, right? If it didn't apply, then it shouldn't be in there.
It came from another ordinance. And
Okay. It seems limiting by having.
Because
it
like
in
we
there.
said, we haven't done this before, so we did use, and I want to say it was somewhere down.
Okay.
Might have been Lower Marion.
And again, I go back to how is anyone going to know that there's workforce housing apartments?
We're going to put language in there about marketing efforts. It has to be marketed in a way that we're showing a real effort to market them and not say, oops, well, we just haven't rented any, because that's not okay. That's not our intent. And we're going to look at the language, Rich, and tighten it up so that there is an effort that is calculable, that we can show that we have work to rent them.
Does the county have some sort of website for people that might qualify that you could use?
You would think they would.
They don't. Even though they're promoting this, I know they are because.
They are, but they don't. And we even asked them for an auditor and they didn't have anyone. So we had to go out and find people who did this. So, yeah.
The county does have a workforce development board, and I think they would be happy to take that issue on.
Yeah.
I was the chair at one time, so I have a sense of it. What's that?
Workforce development. Yeah, yeah.
I think they should have something, some kind of website.
They should. They should have better guidance on this, and they should have auditors they can send you to. And I told them that, but we'll
They focus
work on
more on employment,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Well, this all wraps into the bonus that you're getting.
Correct.
You're getting a bonus because you're including it. If there's nobody marketing it and you rent to no one, then you're gonna just rent these out as regular units.
Right.
So.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to try. I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm going to instruct my leasing people. If someone comes in and meets the criteria for workforce housing, I'm going to push them into one of the workforce housing units because I want to fill them up so that I comply and I'm not like violating fair housing and everything else. So that'll be my instructions to my leasing people. So if you make within that range, you want a 1-bedroom unit, I'm going to put you in one of those regardless.
You don't have to ask for it.
Yeah,
It's offered.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to offer it because I want to get those units leased up as quickly as possible. So.
Okay. Does anyone from the audience want to talk about this? Ask a question. Not a whole lot of speeches, please. Go ahead.
The density. The density is the real issue, and this workforce housing thing seems to increase the density. If we as a township are venturing into this mixed use type operation, wouldn't it be wise to go a little bit slower? And what my neighbors and I have been talking about is not going up to that height, but maybe one floor less, and maybe foregoing this thing that looks like a lot of paperwork for $500 less on a unit, and very strict criteria that are kind of strange, $80,000 to $90,000, and you have to be full-time employed. So it's just is there a way to kind of lop off one of the floors on top and get rid of this this possibility of workforce housing?
The workforce housing is there's certainly a little bit of a political discussion. I asked at one of our meetings whether or not it could be tied to something else that wasn't the bonus density. Just like, could it be tied to something else? And I think the answer was no. But like, it is a hot button topic. I don't know what else to say. So we're just the receivers of this information. So we're kind of talking through all this stuff. I think you got a chance to see it for the last 3 hours. We're trying to be very thoughtful. But this is one that's going to have very, very personal feelings. It's not very often that we get a chance to talk about stuff that isn't very empirical and math and like words. And this doesn't fall into that category. So I don't have a good answer for you because each one of us is going to have a different position just on that alone.
We understand where it's coming from, right? There's people who can't afford housing. And the
Yeah.
idea is to make some housing for our kids who have graduated college and can't get out of our houses because they can't afford anything, right? And all the inventory is 50 years old. So everybody's waiting for the boomers to get out of their 50-year-old houses and go somewhere. And then even those houses are too expensive for this age gap, this income gap. They can't find housing. If you make anywhere between 80 and 100, good luck. You're a renter. And good luck finding something, And there's stuff in the township that's less, but it's from 1971 and 1980, and that's the Hunt Club and that's Georgetown. So that's the spot. That's why it's being promoted everywhere I work, is what part of your project is for attainable housing? What are you doing to give back for people who can't afford to buy a house or can't afford to rent? I mean, that's really the problem. They can't afford to buy and now they can't afford to rent. So that's why the incentives are there.
Yeah, that's the answer. But whether or not you agree with it is something else, but
Right.
that's the do-gooder aspect of it.
Not a happy. No.
we are going to, so as part of this effort, and if no one has anything else, I'd love to wrap this up. So does anyone have anything else to talk about? Oh my gosh.
One other final question. At the end of 10 years, it says the workforce housing agreement expires. What happens if you have the building filled with workforce housing tenants? Do you continue to renew them at the workforce housing rate, or do you suddenly say that's gone and the rent goes up?
So there was a requirement that you guarantee it for 10 years so that people are incentivized to keep tenants and have a commitment. But everyone realizes that market conditions change, zoning changes, things change. I don't know the answer of what you would do if you have a building full. I mean, I'm sure they would continue to lease to tenants. Having a full building is always a good idea for an owner of a building. So I don't think they're going to kick everybody out. They're telling me it's due for a reevaluation in 10 years. It doesn't automatically expire. We're going to take a closer look at that declaration.
Go away after 10 years?
Yeah, we take the units back. I think you should read it.
Yeah,
think
I haven't
it's-
seen it.
It looks,
Mhm.
it looks like it's an expiration date.
Okay, I'll look at it.
So anyway, great. We'll talk about, well, you guys can read that and maybe there's some adjustment that needs to be made.
Yep.
So the goal now is we've had 3 meetings plus the planning commission meeting. We're going to take all of our notes and we're going to correlate them and they're going to go back to the township. And then at some point in the near future, we're going to have a rewritten zoning ordinance that's going to incorporate all the things that we've talked about. I'm guessing you're going to agree with most of them, but maybe you won't agree with all of them. We'll see how we get through all this in the next couple of weeks.
No, I don't think you've said anything that was horrible tonight that we couldn't work with.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
I do think density is going to be a big topic of discussion internally over the next couple weeks. So I don't know where
You
that's.
mean be lower than the 278 that we're showing? Or you mean backing into that number precisely?
Well, you're definitely backing into that number. It's a question
Okay.
of whether or not.
Well, can we have that conversation? I'd rather not leave here and then you get a draft and then we're coming back and we're having that conversation a month from now,
Well, we're just one voice.
right? But you're here and I'm here.
Okay.
So we dropped a significant amount of units. And I can let Michael expound on this, but there is an exchange between the retail and the restaurant being supported by the people on the property. That's how mixed use works. Live, work, play. It all works together. And there's a certain number of people that need to be on the property in order to support those buildings so that they are not now vacant, like what you have on Bethlehem Pike. So there's a sweet spot for a developer, right? So it makes sense. And we need those amenities cost money. I know nobody ever wants to talk about money, but as you start taking units away, the special things that are on the building, the special things that we can do on the property start being removed. We don't want that. That number of units gets that kind of architecture, those finishes, and a successful project. That's why I'm saying that 278 is a very important number. We'd like to say that we took a big step by going from 5 to 4, was what, 330 down to 278? That was a significant drop. And I hope that you see that and don't think that there's more room. Lopping off a floor, absolutely not possible. Whole thing dies. Can't support it.
Okay. I do think the math needs to match, right? So,
Got it.
Okay. Okay. So again, I think, because that came up in one of our meetings as well. So that'll at least be the minimum expectation. And again, we're just one voice. So I can't speak for any other people that might have an opinion on this subject. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It can come from a lot of different directions. I do think a lot of the other stuff is manageable, like, we didn't really talk much about building height. You know, you mentioned the building height being too high. D1 is actually 60 feet tall, so this building is actually less than that. I know you want to lop off a whole floor, but if you're only concerned about height, this building actually is lower than it would be in a D1 district, which is the current zoning.
Right. And let's remember where we are. 309, golf course, Gwinnett Estates, Norristown Road. There couldn't be a better location for a mixed-use development than this property. I can't think of one. You're right next to an interchange.
If you were proving that everyone went up 309 when they were done, that would be awesome. Because at least they weren't going into downtown. But like that's
Right, but you've done significant improvements at the 5-point intersection, and that intersection works significantly better than it has.
I know. The problem, and I'm guessing that you guys, since you stayed here the whole time, you've read the zoning ordinance, you've done the homework, and you're not just listening to emails that come from the neighbors about the sky is falling. Unfortunately, most of the people that come to these meetings, they don't know what the planning commission is. They've never been to a supervisor's meeting, and there's an email out there that kind of got everyone all riled up, and they haven't done the work to really learn and read and understand all the stuff that goes into this.
I trust that you folks have.
Well,
I don't know that anybody
obviously we
behind me has. I
Yes.
don't know that.
Well, but that's so part of it is trying to deal with that uncertainty, and that's what we're trying to do right now, is go through it and make sure that the ordinance really does stand the test of time. And frankly, we didn't do that last time, right? We went about this completely differently last
We were
time.
hoping that this was a very different experience. That was our goal.
Well, and I think the biggest mistake that happened last time was we never should have been the first shot. The way it happened this time was completely different than last time, because all of a sudden everyone came in here and we were the receiver of all that information, and we never got a chance to do the stuff that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, we're off to a good start. But we'll see what happens. You know, with this, we definitely need to clean up the ordinance.
And let me say one thing, and I don't know how that all happened. I can't even remember, but this is how we do it everywhere. You know, I mean, a lot of developers don't. I mean, we spend a ton on architecture, a ton on plans, and, you know, prior to having any ordinance passed, and we make a presentation. You didn't see it, but the council did. And this is what we do, and we didn't do it either. So we didn't feel like we could put our best foot forward in that meeting, because it was, for some reason, it just kind of went a different way. But this is typically how we do it. And we give the planning commission and the council the ability to kind of see what we intend to do. And then you can check with any township around, because we're in a lot of townships in this region, and we do what we say and we say what we do. So, and we own it and we keep owning it. We have no interest in selling. Honestly, when we bought a couple properties in Florida from people that are merchant builders, meaning they build it to sell it. And they build to such a lower standard. We ended up spending probably 20% of what we paid for the building just to fix it up, because it was just so low. So our goal is to own this forever and to kind of have this is our type of development. And honestly, we're doing this a lot of places. Lower Gwinnett is one of the places where we feel it would be the most successful. And this location on 309, kind of edge of the township, underserved area, it just checks all the boxes. And that's why we've been at this for a year and a half, spent a fortune, and we're kind of just starting. So, yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
So I can't guarantee that you'll be back next month. I think that's the plan, but we'll see how well we can get
Sure,
through
we'd love
this-
to be back next month. of
this
course.
rewriting effort. For those of you that stuck around, that's when the pitchforks and all the
No,
tin hats need to come out.
let's not invite that.
Sure, let's ask a couple questions. Are they questions or are they statements?
Well, I hope they're questions.
Okay.
Or possibly a statement. So first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to ask staff if I get a copy of all the review letters. I'd also like the presentations from both the council and from the developer. And if I have to put a right to know or something, just let me know that. I appreciate it.
Well, wait, stop right there.
It's
All
all-
that's on the township
It's
website.
all on the website.
The review letters around the township.
Yeah.
And
If you
both
go-
presentations are there.
We don't have the presentations. They're bringing these on a flash drive, so they take it back at the end of the meeting. Like it's right here.
Well,
on the computer.
I understand what happened, but it's a public document, I would think.
Oh, I guess, yeah, you go watch it on the, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not
But
very
the,
helpful, but I understand what you're saying. So, basic question. I mean, you're changing the zoning. So why did this go to zoning? Why do you have it? Why doesn't Joe Cools and the zoning committee have this in front of them?
What we're filing is an application for a rezoning and a text amendment. That's a legislative process. As Mr. Gray knows, being an ex-supervisor, that process goes through this. The zoning hearing board is for variances and special exceptions and other challenges from the zoning ordinance.
Interpretations.
We didn't file that. We filed a text amendment and a rezoning application.
So can someone answer me why this isn't spot zoning?
Yes, we are extending the zoning ordinance, the zoning district from the property next door to this property, the exact opposite of spot zoning. If we created a separate zoning, it would be spot zoning, which you have all over your township, which I won't talk about, but we are extending the MF3 over to this property, making a district larger, not spot zoning.
Well, you're changing the district is my point, and you're just, I don't want to get in an argument with you, but you're just doing it for this one property. It's just a thought, right? So let me talk real briefly because I know it's late. So we talked about a YMCA selling membership. So somebody said earlier that, the brick and mortar is dead. Well, brick and mortar is dead for office buildings. If you don't think so, there's a great article last week in Wall Street Journal that these properties are going for 90% discount. So what's going to happen to the Burka Data building? They're going to move out of there at one point. Then what happens to that building? Nobody is saying anything about it. So that would be a great LA Fitness. It's big enough. You could put all kinds of stuff in there. You could sell memberships. You can do whatever you want in the building because I haven't heard anybody saying it will always remain an office building. So unless they do that, they could put something in there that could swamp the whole place. And once you allow them in there, then what? They're going to say, well, there's an empty building and we can't rent it. What are they going to do with the empty building? Well, they're going to turn it into something. What would that be? We need to know up front that they're not going to turn it into anything. They're going to keep it as an office building.
All right. So I don't know if we want to play with this at 10 o'clock at night, but if that was the case, it's still land development. So it still has to go through a normal process. I mean, theoretically, it could still trigger a traffic study.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
any change throughout the township goes through a process. The MPC was written to allow zoning ordinance amendments for a change in the use of any property along the entire and on any property within a municipality. There's a process involved because things change.
So they'd be still subject to impervious coverage, building coverage, everything.
They said they keep it as an office.
I don't know if we should be, I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but I don't think that's a basis of an assumption. I mean, I know, I mean, I guess we could make it a conditional use, like a condition of the use, but I don't even know if that's even legal.
Right now, Bracadia has a lease through 2027. What I do know is that if we don't revitalize the property, they have told us, they have told the township that they are leaving and not renewing that lease. So what we're trying to do is keep them in the building. Can I say that forever, 25 years from now, that building is always going to be an office? No, I can't say that about any piece of property within the township.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it's an interesting point, but it still comes back to the fact that if it gets replaced with something else, nothing changes with regards to parking. So, and it's still going to be, well, no, it'll still be a conditional use because it's still under the mixed use.
Right now, they can't do it.
If the master plan requirement says any change in a building or internal circulation requires a new conditional use process, it's built into the ordinance.
I'm saying they're asking for a change to allow them to build this facility.
He's on to something else. I don't know what this question is.
Give it. You don't have to. It is currently zoned D1, leave it D1. Now, they've talked about other things here, and they lopped off a floor, and that's great. But if they would get rid of the retail in another floor, I think they get a lot of people that would really not care. Right now, there's nothing like this in the whole township, nothing. And it could get a lot bigger if Burka Data moves out, a lot bigger. They're going to do something with that building. Burka Data is not staying there forever. So you guys have got to decide, right? What's the risk? That stretch of road there could get a lot worse, a lot worse. And right now, their planning, their traffic study is all static as it relates to that building. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I get it. The office still exists, so it's not like it's a greenfield that could turn into something. It's taking something and turning it into something else. There could be a net add, there could be a net deduct. I agree that we don't know the answer to that, but there are protections in place, as Kristen described, that allow us to essentially go through the same process we're going through right now if they decided that they wanted to take that building down.
Agreed.
But and it wouldn't be by
say no.
Well, okay. Well, if I'm here in 20 years when it happens, then yeah, I'll say no. But it's an interesting point. But it's a little bit of you know,
Too far out.
well, because I mean, who knows? So anyway, what else do you have?
That's all I got.
Okay,
Thanks.
Okay, we done?
I think we're done. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you for your time and your patience. Appreciate it.
Just doing it out.